Hi, everyone. This is a panel called What Publishers Want, How to Get Your Indie Game Funded. During this panel, we'll be discussing the publishing model and what goes into a pitch, what publishers are looking for in indie teams, and we'll discuss alternative forms of funding, including the game fund model as well as self-distribution. My name is Matthew Glenn. I'm an indie developer with Digital Daydream. My pronouns are he, him, and we're in Raleigh, North Carolina. First off, we're going to start with introductions with Tanya Short.
Hey, Tanya X Short, she, her. I'm the captain of Kitfox Games, which is primarily a developer. We started out publishing our own games on Steam and consoles, and I'll probably talk about this more later, but we had some friends that thought we could help by publishing them, so we got into that as well. And I'm also a game designer most of the time during the day. So if I talk about game design, you can say, stop, let's talk more about publishing.
Okay. Next up, Lindsay Rostel.
Hey, I'm Lindsay Rostel, she, her. I am a partner at Kowloon Nights, which is an indie game fund, and I also run a studio on the side, which is Timberline Studio. So I have a bit of that crossover as well. But I'm going to talk about the differences in funding where it's not quite the same publisher model.
Great. Next up, Zalavier Nelson.
Hi, everyone. My name is Oliver Nelson Jr. Pronouns are he, him. I'm a narrative director in games. You might know me from my work on Hypnospace Outlaw. We're the caretakers in Airport for Aliens, currently run by Dog Skatebird, or literally dozens of other games. And I'm going to be talking about making more sustainable games by making things shorter, faster, better, cheaper.
These all sound great. Next up, Brian Quick.
Hi, so I'm Brian. My pronouns are he, him, and I run Yesprit Games, a publisher for, we say, weird, wonderful games with spirit. And we are best known for publishing games like Valhalla, Cyberpunk Bartending Action, and World of Horror.
Exciting. David Martinez.
Hey, everybody. My name is David. Pronouns are he, him. I am the co-founder of Raw Fury. We're an indie publishing label that's been around since 2015. And our goal originally, and still is to have better relationships with developers than is traditionally known with publishers. I think a lot of publishers get a bad rep. Nobody on this panel, because everyone here is super cool. But on the indie side of things, we've been trying to change things up little by little. And that has been our guiding mantra ever since we started. We're probably most well known for the Kingdom series. And we've also published some cool stuff like Bad North Andara. And Star Renegades is one coming up next.
Great. And we have Chris and Tony.
Hi, everyone. I'm Chris Anthony, he, him. I'm co-founder and also the lead barista in Toge Productions. So we made a game called Coffee Talk, and we also not only develop our own games, but we also help other Indonesian and Southeast Asian developers publish their games to the global market. Basically, we want to, bring or maybe bridge underrepresented communities, Southeast Asian communities mostly, bring their stories to the world. And we've started our publishing initiative back in 2017, and it actually didn't start. It started just we just want to help our fellow indie developers in Indonesia, and it kind of grew from there.
Great. Okay. Our first question is going to be for Tanya. It's sort of a big question. What does a publisher do, and why might you need one?
Well, I'm going to try to not talk for a whole hour about that, but because the answer is that it totally varies, and it depends on what you need and what the publisher can offer. And so that's actually sort of the first thing that a publisher does want to know, actually, is what do you need? Because typically the reason that you want a publisher is that you're missing something. Either you're missing the capability of finding your audience, you're missing localization contacts because you want to translate your game, you're missing some kind of aspect of getting the game to the point where you can release it confidently and know that it has a decent chance of getting played by somebody. And so every publisher kind of has a slightly different specialty. But typically, the number one skill set that even a very, very talented developer is missing is marketing. And so it'll come up again and again over the next hour, I'm sure. But most publishers, their offer is you make the game, and we'll find an audience for you. And hopefully, that's already an audience they have access to in some way. But that's the main thing, the discussion of how do you make sure the publisher does what they're going to do they do what they're going to say they're going to do, but then how do you work with them to give your game the best chance possible?
Great.
I don't know if anyone disagrees. Feel free to disagree with me at any time, by the way. But I guess the biggest example of that is Dwarf Fortress, actually, which is a very different game than the games that KitFox normally makes. We make little like action RPGs. But I was friends with Tarn, who's making Dwarf Fortress, and he was like, I don't really want to handle the whole Steam deal. Like, he has his own website and he had his own community. So his problem wasn't reaching people. His problem was like dealing with Steam. Because that's a whole different ball game than having your own website. And I said, yeah, sure, we can help you with that, and we'll take a percentage and that kind of thing. And we'll handle talking to press and journalists, and we'll schedule newsletters, and we'll do all these things that you don't want to do, so you can focus on making your dwarves, I don't know, go mad and kill each other and whatever it is that you want to do in your next Dwarf Fortress update. But that's like one out of 1,000 different ways that relationship can work.
So you have to do more than just make a game. You have to tell people about it, I guess. So
yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of developers are very creative folks that only want to focus on doing that stuff, and so they're okay with finding a publisher or a partner of some sort that will help them take care of all the other stuff that they just don't want to handle, which is fine. I mean, that's when folks like us can come in. I mean, you could probably make a reasonable argument that no independent developer actually needs a publisher. It's just a matter of what they think they might get as a benefit in exchange for, a cut of revenue or something like that. But I mean,
especially when you're like one or two people, it's like, how much time are you going to take away from developing to do that marketing? It's a huge job.
It's gigantic. Like, the undertaking is pretty massive, and some teams understand that, and that's why they might look for a publisher. And other teams don't understand that and underestimate the amount of work. And then, hopefully they're still successful. And if they're not, then maybe the next time, if they want to make a game, they could consider a publisher. But I mean, we've seen plenty of cases on both sides, right, where it seems like a game just came out of the blue, but actually it was just a developer that garnered themselves a really good Twitter following, and they were able to promote themselves pretty successfully, and that's what you want to see. That's great, but those are also like the that kind of like the outliers, if you will. A lot of the time, you don't hear about the other 100 developers who tried the same thing and it didn't work out, which is always a huge bummer.
And that happens regardless of whether or not you are published, as you can attest. Like, the nature of game development is such that a lot of what we do is throwing shots into the void. Now, we can take measured, intentional steps to increase our chances for success, but the reality is a lot of what we do, as measured and intentional as it is inherently risky and creative, and as a result, dangerous. So every developer, one of the things that I'm looking forward to in this panel is every developer has to consider their own risks and vulnerabilities and how a publisher may or may not serve those things.
Yeah, and I think that opens up a question of sustainability. Like, how does, when you're taking those risks as a developer, like, I guess the risk is a little different when you're a publisher and you have a little bit more money than the developer itself. This isn't on the list of questions, but I think it opened one. Daliver, as far as making games like sustainably, how do you feel that, like, in relation to self-funding, that you do that? Like, how do you make games consistently and sustainably?
The major thing that I look into is being very frank. There's 6 things that developers need support in often. They would like funding. Money is very important. Marketing. Legal support. You don't want to get sued, or at least when you get sued, you want someone to help you with that. you want marketing, funding, legal, porting, localization, and quality assurance, QA. For those 6 needs, especially for the newer developers out there, what you might not realize is when you get a publisher, one way or another, you often are paying for all of those things, but it's coming out of something called recoup. All the funding you receive, all the marketing, legal support, all that is added to a tally that at the end of development, when the game comes out, that is essentially a debt that needs to be paid off before you can begin to see your full revenue share cut from the game, however many ways you've divided it with between your collaborators and also your publisher. When you have hundreds of thousands in that recoup column for games that are already inherently risky, or rather games that are already in an inherently risky medium, and you're receiving 40% after the hundreds of thousands are paid, if it hits that hundreds of thousands at all, that isn't a model for sustainable development. Every other medium that has sustainable long-term careers for its creators has an emphasis on long-term passive revenue, on holding on to songwriter rights, holding on to streaming and distribution deals, thinking about how one production benefits your next 10 years as opposed to the next 2. So a big thing that I emphasize for sustainable development is quite simply, we're in one of the very few mediums where you can make something for $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 and have it reach a global audience. But that is a space of design and budget that is not seen as legitimate. If you want to be a real game, you got to have a publisher and $1,000 budget and have a moonshot every time. What I emphasize in my development approach is sometimes I make large things, sometimes I make small things, but every single thing I make is deeply focused and so far basically made without publisher support, because I know every time I put something out into this world, however well it does, because I've controlled the costs and that I've taken on, because I've looked at the full scope of what I'm doing, and because I have built up this not to be undervalued sell to bring on a publisher or bring on someone who's a specialist in that, or pay a contractor or so on. Every time I put one of those things into the world, it has a chance to be the big one. And the more things I put into the world, the more chances you get, and the more passive revenue I have coming in to fund whatever I do next. Sometimes I put out a game and it just gives me pizza money every month. But if I've got 10 or 20 games giving me pizza money every month, if I don't have contracting revenue for a month, 2 months, that I'll actually turn out to be pretty okay.
Okay.
Can I chime in a little bit? Because I think that Xavier is saying something really important, and it's part of the cultural shift over the last 5-10 years. Is I think it's more common for publishers to not take 100% recoup up front, and that's very important for helping developers be sustainable. I think the more that developers get even some percentage as the publisher is recouping, it can really help help them eat something while the publisher is recouping. So where possible, that's definitely a clause that publishers do not want to talk about typically. But maybe as a developer is good to bring up and ask, how will I survive if we don't
being between 1 to 4 months before your first payment comes in on a platform. How are you eating during those 1 to 4 months? Are you getting some revenue during that 1 to 4 months? Those are really important questions to ask about your long-term sustainability.
Can I add one point here? Just to complement, or I should say contrast, the points that Zalavia and Tanya are bringing up. I have actually had a developer, I wouldn't say argue, like negotiate. We didn't sign this deal in the end, but they actually said they didn't want the like a share right at the start. They wanted the publisher to recoup, being us, to recoup whatever costs and stuff we had incurred immediately, like 100%. Take it as fast as you can, and so that the faster you're done, the faster we as a developer get the lion's share. Assuming that the deal gives them the lion's share. There is some logic in that, but then like you said, Zalavia, if you're waiting 4 months or more, like say you've got a simultaneous release across all platforms, including PlayStation, those reports take a damn long time to come in. So that's 4, 5, 6 months, depending on how slow accounts are put in. That's a long time to not be eating.
Yeah.
So I mean, I have heard some developers put that argument forward, but I think it has to be considered extremely carefully whether you want to play it. If you have a safety net, sure, by all means, but sustainability is a very important word to keep in mind.
Considering the statements we've all made, I think the solution here is just to not eat. If you can find a way as a developer to not eat, everything is solved.
Yeah, I just want to add something. Like, I think even before the developers or like publishers sign deals, I think like both sides need to have like clear expectations and then risk analysis. Because like a lot of the developers that I meet, usually they are very, I don't know how to say it, but dreamy. Like they think like, oh, having a publisher will solve everything. Like suddenly I will have a lot of money and everything. But it doesn't. That's not the reality, right? So sometimes they, the developers themselves, they need to do market research. At least have a clear expectation of like, like what's the ceiling of like this game genre is gonna sell, and what's the bottom, and like what's the median, right? So when I make like a so-so game, I will fall on this area, and like the maximum is kind of like this game. So you have like clear expectation of like how many budget you're gonna spend versus like the possibility of like income or like revenue that the game is gonna generate. So from there, like you can kind of like do your math calculations for like risk and investment.
If I'm going to fund a game, like it's fine for the developer to be a bit dreamy and a bit optimistic, but I do really want them to have a realistic understanding of what risks they are taking by making this game and by signing with me or us. And so I don't know, I can't speak for everybody, but I think it's common for publishers to want the developer to understand what risk they're asking the publisher to take. Because when you ask for this amount of money, you're asking them to take this amount of risk. And if you're asking for this amount of money, you're asking them to take this amount of risk. And so that can really help you as a developer guide that conversation to be realistic, and also for everybody to be on the same page about what this relationship is and how this game might perform or might perform. And what about the project is risky exactly? Is it something cultural? Is it something technological? Is it something else about the game?
I want to ask Lindsay real quick, like how would a game fund figure into this differently than a publisher?
So for us, we're actually structured differently in the way we recoup. So our developers always get first dollar. If they really would like to push for us to recoup it 100%, they can try. We'll probably say no, just for the sake of that's not healthy for the developer. We want you to be able to basically, reap the rewards of the hard work that you're doing. We're here to write a check and then stay out of the way, so you can take care of your creative vision and go from there. We do offer support, but we don't offer like publisher services. So we don't actually, hire the QA for you and put it on our accounting budgeting sheet. We don't hire Loc for you and put it on our sheet. We don't do the marketing for you. However, we work with you to develop your budget to account for all of those things, and then can make recommendations or introductions to different QA houses, port houses, etc. But really, we're actually looking for devs that they're mindful about sustainability. They understand like what their risks are that they're taking, because they're taking a lot of the risk in their success too. They're looking generally to self-publish. We are open to partnering with publishers for certain games because, as we all know, like finding an audience, building an audience is an incredibly difficult task. And when you do get smaller devs, those 2-person teams, we don't want to take away from their time either. But what we try to do is come in with the money earlier so they can potentially get a better revenue share later when they go to a publisher, because they don't need the money part, right? You're eliminating that huge component of risk for what a publisher might be outlaying. And it's like, hey, we need your expertise. And so you're coming in for the expertise of the publisher, their access to their audience. And so we get to balance that. But like for us as a fund, it's really about coming in and helping studios not only be financially stable, but also sort of knowledge equity stable. So you're building your skill sets about that marketing aspect. You're learning your release management, and you're going to mess up. Like I'm self-publishing for the first time on my title, the Red Lantern. I've previously done like, big publisher games like Activision games. And that's like a whole different beast. And that machine moves very fast, and it's arguably you can't move it in the way you want it to. And so I'm learning, I've made mistakes, and hopefully also through mine, I can help our developers to not make the mistakes that I do. And I think like Tanya and Xavier can speak to the aspects of like how much time a demo takes away from doing your development. Like going to PAX is hell. It's so important, but it's hell. And so for us, it's about removing different aspects of friction, but providing full ownership to the developer. But like, there's a place for everyone in this industry. Different people need different help. Some people really just want money and partners to stay out of the way. And other people, like, not only do they need publisher help in like getting through like, cert, lot check, all those processes and just like learning what it is. But like that will help them be successful. And I think at the end of the day, we're all looking to find games that can be successful and make developers more successful. So rising tides, right? They raise all ships. So like let's continue to kind of push that from all aspects. And that's how we look at it, is like, hopefully if we did it right, you don't need us in the future, but you want us, because we can help de-risk you. That's our goal.
Great.
And like
great.
right now, we just did Spirit Fair. We helped the Thunder Lotus guys fund that game, and they obviously did a lovely job with their self-publishing. And so it's very cool to see that, and hopefully they can share their knowledge, and they are sharing their knowledge with our other developers. So we continue to build that along the way.
Yeah. When you're thinking about like seeing if a game is going to be successful, when you look at a pitch, what are you sort of seeing as something that might be good or something that might be terrible and setting up for failure in the future? This is a question for Chris.
Yeah, I think like when I see like a pitch, I could sometimes you can really tell like if the developer have done their research. Like, do they have like benchmark games that are their competitors? Like, how are you gonna like differentiate or like kind of like identify your hooks and stuff like that, and have realistic expectations of like what your project is, the timeline and budget, and then like like the scale of it. And a lot of pitches sometimes they don't include like the timeline development. They don't show roadmaps. They don't even have like like a clear scale of like what are the features they want to aim. So I think if they already done their research, and then they know they have like a clear direction of what kind of game they want to make and how they're gonna execute that, I think that's that's something, at least like it's a good start. And then of course after that, like talking with the developers and then understanding their vision is another step. It's a very important step after the pitch.
And as far as like looking for funding, how deep into development should developers be before they start looking for that? Like this is a question for Brian.
How deep into development? I think my personal recommendation is that you want to don't developers shouldn't assume that publishers can sort of magically construct the perfect vision of what a developer intends from like a paper pitch. So I personally recommend a prototype that at least achieves, I don't know, like 60-70% of their intended final art style, or even if it's just like literally a 1 or 2 minute playthrough or video, at least something that shows that helps people, not have to use their imagination to try and reach into your brain. So, a prototype gets that most effectively, I think, in terms of both mechanic and visual style. But if you've only got a video, that does help too. This is probably going to be pretty early on, so I think you'd still be in pre-production, I would say. And if you're pitching for funds, right, you'd probably not want to be so far in that you not want to be so early that you can barely answer questions about where you're headed and what your vision is.
Okay. And like Zalavir, when you're working without a publisher, like how deep in development are you before you start showing your game?
I think in general, as Brian really helpfully pointed out, you should be looking at these before you even start the development of the game. As soon as a brilliant game idea comes into your head, you want to be thinking about how it's going to be funded, how it's going to be marketed, how it's going to look, because that's a huge part of how games are sold, and at what point you do reveal. So when I'm looking at revealing my projects, because they often have, when I'm working on my own stuff, a development cycle of about 1.5 years or less. That means that I can't have like the quiet period of like a year of build up and content and stuff, and then brilliant reveal, we're coming out in 3 weeks. That all of those timelines are truncated. So often I structure the development cycle itself around how soon do we establish the core of what we're making and that it's actually works, and then the second bit of that is, okay, how soon do we get to a place where we can start talking about it? Because whether it's an open development process or a more structured release and marketing campaign, you need to talk about the game so that people can and will buy it. And if you fold that into the production schedule itself, then you're essentially getting a whole lot of additional work for free. The number one thing that I see, especially beginning indies, needing a desperate assistance in, and that publishers can help in massively because they've seen how other processes have gone right and wrong, is building up a knowledge of production.
And once you're, I guess, outside of the production, David, like what does that marketing push actually look like? Like when publishers are working with developers, like what is the publisher bringing to the table? Like we talked around marketing a little bit, but let's get into it more.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, Tanya kind of broached this subject a little bit earlier. Like, real quick, I do want to say, kind of building off what Brian and Zalavir were saying, is that bringing a project too late to a publisher can actually hinder a lot of these marketing effects. Zalavir's just talked about extensively how it's really important that you build kind of like marketing activities into development timeline, because then you can utilize these things for your own promotion, which is necessary if you're trying to make a business out of creating games. When we get pitched games too far into their development, a lot of time we won't take them on or even consider them because we will have missed the chance to make a big marketing splash. The first reveal is really important. Sometimes we get people trying to pitch us games that are in early access already, and they're already out. Like we can't do anything really marketing wise there. You've used up a lot of the momentum already before approaching a publisher. So when I think about like what it is that a publisher can bring to the table in regards to the marketing is it does help that, because we've this isn't our first rodeo, that we have a little bit of knowledge in regards to what audiences might be receptive to the type of game that you have. Maybe the game that you have lines up with the publisher's catalog, which is great. Sometimes it doesn't line up with the publisher's catalog, and if you're okay with that and the publisher's okay with that, and they must be if they're willing to take kind of a larger risk, hopefully they got something up their sleeve there in regards to the marketing. I think that what a publisher can bring to the marketing is it's just like a lot of aside from experience, like kind of like a lot of strengths in regards to funding and whatnot. I'm not saying that publishers want to blow up your project costs. Nobody wants to do that because we all want to try to make this sustainable and be profitable in the end. But we do have that ability to at least fund some maybe grander marketing ideas as something a little crazy, something that's not inherently organic, kind of like your paid marketing component, stuff like that, reaching the proper target audiences, all that stuff. So I guess it's just a matter of having a little more muscle to play around with, having a bit more experience, having data to draw on from other title launches that can be applied to your own title launch. But also, I would highly encourage developers who do take a publisher to work closely with those publishers' marketing departments and make sure that the activities that are being done on behalf of your project actually align with what you want and actually something that you think could truly benefit the game. Like if a marketing or brand manager comes up to you and says like, "Oh, I got this idea to do something, crazy, and it costs like $1 million to do or something ridiculous," and you're like, I'm not really comfortable with that. Could we do this instead? Like, hopefully your publisher is the kind of publisher that will actually take your recommendation seriously and not barrel over you. If they're barreling over you, find a different publisher. If it's, you want a publisher that will be a partner with you, that will work alongside you, and they should be willing to take a look at any marketing ideas that you as a developer bring to the table.
I think there's also historically a problem with publishers saying that they're going to do X, Y, Z, and then either they don't do it or it's unclear how much of it they did. Like there's not a lot of evidence for what exactly happened. But they just, we spent this amount of money on you. And how do you prove that? So I don't know how true this is anymore, but 5 or 10 years ago, it was definitely the case that I had a lot of people saying, "Oh, well, they say I owe them, $500,000, but like, did they buy ads in GQ? Like, what happened? Like, I don't know." It's maybe they just racked up hours browsing the internet and called it research. And so just being able to have like a timely, itemized list of where the marketing costs are being spent is step one for you to know what's going on and make sure that's in the contract. But as far as what publishers want, they do want you to have ideas, and they want you, typically, if they're good, to be involved in the activities because they want your assets, they want your art and your vision to be part of how it connects with the audience. And so even if you're a marketing newbie and you have no idea how to market your game, knowing what's great about your game and knowing what people are going to love about it is step one. And so they'll love to hear about it.
And one last thing that will help folks who might be in this position is you can actually have as a clause in your contract to avoid getting sprung on you the $1 million marketing campaign that you have to approve expenses, single itemized expenses that are over a certain amount. So if they're about to spend $10,000, you can say, you can have as a clause in your contract that costs over $5,000, $10,000 have to be approved by the developer. And that can save you from, I paid for the team's vacation to Japan where they pitched to Nintendo once. That's a lot of money.
This is a very interesting subject because in Toge Productions, we thought all marketing costs should be absorbed by the publisher because we feel like it's a lot more fair that way because the publisher by doing they're responsible for marketing, right? So that's their part of what they put into the project. So we feel like that's gonna be our investment. So all projects that being published by Toge, we don't put the marketing costs in the recoup. So it's everything is absorbed by Toge, and so that's just something that we want to show. We put this investment in this project because we believe in you guys, and we don't want to burden you on that marketing costs. So yeah, I thought a lot of publishers do that. So apparently.
I think that a lot of indie publishers do that. In fact, I know that we're not charging anybody for hours or whatever. We have a trailer producer, for example. We're not being like, "Oh, it took him 10 hours to make that trailer, so now we're gonna that's a $200,000. Yeah, that's what it is. We're not doing anything like that. If it's an external cost, if it's something that we can't do ourselves in-house, then we'll talk to the developer. If it's a very high cost, we'll get that approved by them ahead of time. Like Zalavir said, we have this in our agreements where we have a minimum marketing spend. And then once that has been reached, then we need to be talking to our developers about every single thing that we're doing. So we're not trying to bloat costs. Again, doesn't make sense anyway to bloat costs because the publisher also has to pay that back. But it's even more crucial for a developer because they don't have the pocket money that a publisher has to sustain itself while they're waiting for that first payment to come in, right?
Also wanted to loop back a little bit on the idea of pitching, where like when to come at your idea or come to a publisher with your idea. Like, yes, there are certain ones that are paper and certain ones where you need to have a build. Also, don't be afraid to go back to publishers. But that process you're taking when you talk to a fund, a publisher, a friend is the same thing you're doing throughout the entire development cycle. That's what builds your marketing campaign, right? That first thing you're able to say to get somebody excited about your paper pitch or your first build, you're then just continuing to build upon that one conceit across the board. So like think about that as like every step you take in development is another path to pursue publishing again, right? Or funding again if you don't have it yet. It's a way to potentially do Kickstarter or crowdfunding or Patreon. It allows you to build an audience on Twitter. It allows you to bring that demo to PAX and build that audience there. So there's so many entry points that you can have. It could be reaching out to, it's harder to reach out to a platform, but technically you can do that and try to get into a marketing showcase or whatever that may or may not be. But like, don't be, in a sense, like, know when your game has the right thing, but also test. I like to test ideas, and we test things that way where it's like, I'll just talk to a friend who's maybe not a gamer. I'm not really worried about someone stealing my idea necessarily because it's like all in execution. But like, let me do my like 2-line pitch to you. Is this of interest? Right. And if you can get a spark there, great. Now let's explore what the 1 page looks like. Does that still generate a spark? Let's now start prototyping. Does that have the spark? And so constantly like tweak and build up from there, because you're really like molding out of clay, right, to find what that thing is. And you have to first kind of rough in that shape and go from there and use that as the entry point to start talking to any of us and see what that can be. And also to the point of not coming too late, not only for marketing problems, it doesn't let us visualize anything. You filled in all the gaps at that point. And honestly, part of a great pitching element is letting us imagine the best version of the game too, right? And if you're already done that, like, hopefully it is the best version of the game, but we all know development's pretty hard. So like there's going to be things that you've changed in scope at some point along the way. So like let everyone like build that up and let's come at it together. So you can hopefully hit that full vision. But I think like all the marketing discussions and everything that are happening here, it's like the key part of making your game. But like, don't forget, marketing starts at the very second you start creating your game, and you're just going to continue doing that forever. And if you own your own IP and you have this passive income, that never stops. You're bringing it to new platforms, you're refreshing some kind of content, and that's the exciting part of being able to make this kind of content and go from there.
It's very interesting. Like it's the pitch isn't like the end. It's sort of a process that's growing and changing. Lindsay, like as far as when developers are coming up with the monetization plan, do you think that they should have a complete monetization plan together, or is that sort of a thing that you would again collaborate with the publisher on trying to figure out the one that works?
For us, we want you to have sort of your idealized vision. Like where do you want to release the game? What are your core platforms? Are you doing, additional content? You definitely need to have a budget. Like you might not need to have like the full spec of we expect to sell, like have a target number of units. Here's our competitive. Don't just choose outliers. Please try to choose the middle band, and you can say like at the top end we could do, Fall Guys numbers, but don't use Fall Guys as your main example. And so, but like show like a knowledge of how your budget relates to how those kind of games in that band work, right? Like, also don't pitch, you know, a $20 million dating simulator. Like, that's gonna be a really tough sell. And so like find where those kind of huh?
I said,
Brian-
I hope
Brian-
someone makes that. Yeah.
I think Brian wants that actually.
He's ready.
Where's the market just needs to wake up, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I love BioWare to always pitch their games that way. That's how I play them, at least. I play them like AAA dating simulators. But like that's a huge part when you are also pitching to publishers. Know your game, know your market. You don't have to say like we don't expect you to understand the full minutia of everything. If you do, great. Like, but mostly understand like where you're headed. We're here to help with some of that. But understand your competitive advantages, understand the market in which you're entering, and be prepared to, you know, sort of defend some of the statements that you're making, especially if they're really out there, because we will ask those questions like, hey, here's your production plan, here's what you think you're making, is this really what it is? And going from there to like, where do we see this kind of success? Because like for all of us, we're open, we want to take big risks, we want to do the thing, but like especially on an alternative model, we have to prove out that this model can be successful. So we're pretty selective about where we pick things to make sure that we're showing like you can be successful in giving the developer, you know, making them do everything in a sense, like giving them the opportunity to do everything and giving them money at the start. It's not going to work for everyone, but like we want to prove that there is success in that kind of pathway. So we do, I mean, to be frank, we choose more business minded. There's a section of business minded studios. So they know how they're going to fit into that. So we'll choose super artistic sometimes, but like we definitely, since we don't have all those services, we need to know you can execute and that you kind of understand where you live in the market.
Mm-hmm. And I guess going further on the discussion of scope a little bit, Chris, what are the signs that a pitch is too big, like scoped wise, or that a team isn't seeking enough money? You're muted right now.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. Okay, so yeah, when you send your pitch, usually you have like a benchmark, like you know, what's your competitor, like what's your kind of like what's your genre, so like you know where do you compare your games, and just what Lindsay say, like when you compare your game to like Fall Guys, that's like an outlier, like that's so far out, right? So if your team is like only 2 guys with a very, you know, like very small budget, and you're aiming to something like so far out, then that's probably, you know, it's too far away. And also like pitching to a publisher for like funding doesn't mean like it will solve all your problems, right? It doesn't mean like because now you have like this $1 million budget, you could hire everybody. Because like in the end, like you also have to understand how to execute that idea, and then have, you know, like who's gonna direct the game and make sure like that, you know, the experience that what you want to deliver is exactly what you want it to be, right? And not diverge along the development process, because, you know, like sometimes making a game takes 2 to 3 years, and along the way sometimes you can diverge, but you don't want to diverge too much, right? So because when you diverge too much, then you're gonna end up in like development hell, and then you can, you know, you'll try to add more features, more things, and you know you're going nowhere. So at least have a clear timeline, and maybe if your timeline is like more than 2 years, maybe you have to start thinking of scoping down, and then make sure that the comparisons that you're using, the benchmarks that you're using, is that something that's within that, like within your capabilities. So you have to know your limits and what your skill set is, and not use the outliers as your, you know, like your benchmark. So because like it's the chance of like hitting that success is gonna be very, very small. Yeah, perhaps maybe others have, you know, like things to add on this.
Yeah, I had another follow-up question about it. I guess for Zalavir, like as a developer, like when do you know what to cut? Like when you're trying to determine what's going to be outside of that scope.
Your scope can increase infinitely or decrease infinitely. It will be painful either way. So one major thing I advocate actually is in the earliest production stage as possible. If you're trying to figure out what to cut, you essentially cut away as much as possible. You keep cutting and cutting, and you think, does this still offer the fundamental vision I want to bring into the world? Is this still an appealing game for the market in terms of the length, in terms of the polish, in terms of the visual or visual quality or gameplay complexity? Everything is based upon achieving that creative vision, and if anything, having the flexibility to say, actually, this game could fit this box, but it could also fit this box, and it could be still be a really compelling box. Identifying that gives you a really great chance to say, let's say that the right publisher relationship does come along. It does give you an opportunity to say, here are the exact ways in which it could expand that would help it, as opposed to being an arbitrary budget sink, or here's ways that it absolutely cannot be cut because it's fundamental to what the game is. Whatever you're doing, I was just going to say, whatever you're doing, whatever your development process is, figure out what exactly you are making as soon as possible so you can make those decisions.
Of course, it's harder for some genres and some audiences and whatever. If you're trying to make an open world game, you've from the beginning you've signed on for a ridiculous scope. It's kind of like the new like don't make an MMO as your first game thing. But depending on the genre, the most important thing I think about that early formation that Lindsay was talking about, where you have the 2 sentences that describe the game, and you have the 1 page that describes the game, and you have your prototype, is that you are defining for yourself, not just other people, what the core actually is of that user experience. So when someone's playing your game, like, does it really matter that there's 500 butterflies or whatever, or is the important thing that catching the butterfly feels really good? And if the point is that 1 verb, that core gameplay is really good, then maybe set aside what happens if there aren't 500 varieties of things to do with that core gameplay, and how to make that compelling. But it's a lot easier if you've defined from the beginning what is so great about this, and haven't just sort of wandered into making something where if you cut all the variety, then suddenly you don't have a game anymore. So yeah, just crystallizing it into words specifically, I think, can actually be really helpful for your future self in 6 months when you're sort of mired in not sure what to cut.
Just to add a little bit, like I think if you could focus on the player's experience of when you're playing, like what kind of experience do you want the players to feel when they're playing your game, that would help a lot in directing your game, right? For example, like when we start making Coffee Talk, Fahmi, which is the creator that comes up with the idea for Coffee Talk, the pitch was like, I want to make a game where the player can feel like they're holding a warm drink and drinking like coffee or any warm drink when there's raining outside, and then you're listening to music and talking to your friends. So that's like the pitch is that sentence, and I think we focus on that player experience throughout development to make sure like, okay, this is the experience that we want players to feel, and then we cut everything that doesn't deliver that experience. And yeah, so the Coffee Talk is actually a very small game, right? But I think the experience is delivered very well.
It's true even for big games. I think the most successful games and the most successful pitches I've seen focus on the player experience, that feeling of what feeling are you trying to give the player, and if you can communicate that, then I think you'll make a better game, and publishers will be more excited too.
Great. And as far as like what publishers like as looking for as far as their brand or their catalog, Tanya, should you pitch to a publisher that doesn't seem to have games that are sort of match like your game doesn't really match their catalog as much. I was trying to like look at KitFox specifically, and like you guys have a lot of different games like in your catalog. It's a lot of variety.
Yeah, we've sort of taken on friends that we think that some portion of our audience will really like the game because there's some RPG element or there's some systemic element. But yeah, we're a bit more messy, I would say, in our definition of what exactly the games we're looking for. And I think that is generally true for publishers. That if a game really stands out to them, they'll find a way. But the question for you is, do you think that their audience matches your game? Because even if the publisher is willing to take that risk and say, okay, we want to grow our audience to include fans of this kind of game, you have to understand that that's going to be harder for them than to take their existing, I don't know, million players or whatever and show them something that they know they're already going to like because they liked something else. Devolver is a really interesting example of, it seemed like most of their catalog was Pixel Blood, but now they have Fall Guys, right? And it's not just Fall Guys. They also had Hatoful Boyfriend. They've had a couple of other successes that sort of buck the trend. And if you actually look at it, their audience is sort of a devil may care attitude. That's sort of the actual Devolver core, it would seem. And some of it is, Pixel Blood focused, but they have a lot of other flavors. And I think the short answer to your question is pitch everybody, but I would focus your efforts on those publishers that you think you'll get the most value out of. And of course, be realistic that, it's clear Annapurna seems to be more focused on a narrative, cinematic type experience. So they'll be more interested in that. Maybe don't spend weeks and weeks of your time trying to craft a pitch for a Metroidvania to them. But at the same time, there's no reason to limit your options. If you're making a cool game and you think that a publisher might suit the needs that you have, then absolutely pitch to them. It's just a matter of controlling your own time and investment at that point.
And we've been talking about Fall Guys, I guess, a lot recently. I think everyone is playing it. It's an amazing game, but it's taking advantage of a few things that I noticed. One is an indie game that uses like a games as a service platform. It's also, I think, launched on PlayStation Plus simultaneously. David, how would you see like developers looking at subscription services and games as a service as far as their pitches and sort of their like expectations in creating a game? Like, should they be considering this thing early on? Should they be something that comes later? Like, what do you think?
Oh, there is a lot to unpack with that one.
Yeah, a little
I
bit.
feel like this is actually like the really hot internal debate amongst a lot of developers and publishers in general, like the cultural shift of stuff like Game Pass and PS Plus. Okay, so let's start with real quick. Let's just start with Fall Guys, right? Because you mentioned it, and we have been talking about it a little bit. It took a cue from what Rocket League did many years ago with offering this game to players for free to build up a gigantic community. PlayStation, I'm sure, paid out the nose for it, and good, because that game is worth it. And then simultaneously, they launched themselves a community on Steam through some very clever social media tricks, or not tricks, strategy, both. That what's the gentleman's name? Oliver. He's very gifted, and I think that a developer ultimately should probably just consider what it is that they think is best for their game. I don't think they need to necessarily think about, will I be able to get a Game Pass deal? Will I be able to get Microsoft's attention for this thing, right? Will I be able to get Sony to pony up money or something? I would dare say you probably want to leave that for a publisher anyway, because they might be able to negotiate a better deal for you. I'm not saying it should be completely out of mind, but I don't think it should be like the focus of your pitch, or even the center of your pitch, or maybe even a page on your pitch. You should just, when you're trying to get a publisher's attention, you should just be talking about the game itself, the scope for it, and the publisher will be able to figure out pretty quickly if they think they can sell it to first party. They most of the time we can look at a game and be like, oh, I bet you Microsoft would take a look at that for Game Pass. Ooh, I bet you Apple might take a look at that for Apple Arcade. So yeah, I think for the pitch itself, right, for the formulation of the pitch and your pre-production and whatnot, you should just focus on the game being what you want it to be, and if you're going to go the publisher route, they can certainly take a look at it. The money that's being thrown around by Microsoft and Sony and Apple is insane. Like, a lot of the deals that are coming through will pay for your development and then some. Like, you'll be in the green before you even launch your game. The story is I won't say it's common, but it's not uncommon either to hear about, especially over the last couple of years. A lot of these first party platforms are throwing a ton of money to get people to buy into their subscription services. How that impacts us culturally, that's a whole other like panel that you could have about whether or not this is even a good or a bad thing. When we start making games to sustain our studios, and when we start making games just for large first party platforms, and that's it. But that aside, no, I don't think you need to worry about it as a developer so early.
And we're already at 55 minutes. Went by really quick for me. So I guess like a question for everybody: what are some beginner mistakes you notice indies make when looking for funding or talking to a publisher? And just like really quick, so we can run through and then close. So we'll start with Tanya.
I think the biggest mistake is not focusing on knowing who you're making your game for. If you've defined your player experience of what that feeling is you want to give the player, you should know who will love that experience, who will really connect with that offering that you're giving. And if you can define that, then everything will be so much easier. Don't put it off, even though it's a scary question, and even though it doesn't produce code or art immediately. It's the most important part of game development.
Okay. And Lindsay.
From a publisher side and fund side, for me, it's as well thought out production plan as you can have, and a knowledge of the things that are your unknown scaries. Not being willing to acknowledge something that's scary in your development cycle is sort of a yellow flag from the other side, where they're like, nah, it's all going to be easy. And you're like, that's not true. And so you want your developer to know, like, hey, I understand this will be hard. We're going to figure out what it means, what this game is as we're making it too, right? Like, you're learning how to make the game as you're making the game. There's so much that comes out of that. So being really honest with yourself that, like, hey, here's what we're after. This is what we're building. Here's how we're pursuing this. Here are features, team plan, but also being open. Like, we understand this part's scary. We think we're ready for it, but like, here's like one of our risks, basically. You don't have to do like a big SWOT analysis or something like that, but you should just be aware of it from your own development, because they're going to come up, and that's the thing that can bite you. And so it's just knowing that and being honest about it. We'll ask the question anyway, because we're going to see it. We're going to see that you don't have any network ops people on your production plan, but you have a online game. So we're going to ask that question. So like, make sure that all of that vision's cohesive and you're thinking about it.
And Zalavir.
Especially when you're self-funding, the number one mistake I see is not accounting for all the invisible things. Again, this is an incredible area where a game fund or a publisher can help you, at least in calling out, you haven't accounted for this. If in terms of your design, you have, say this could be an inventory system or spend a certain amount of time making that. Does your design require an inventory system, or is the player only going to really have 8 things throughout the game? And you can make assumptions around that shorten your dev timeline and how much money you're putting into a modular inventory system very early on. In terms of the entire development cycle, absolutely just taking anything for granted in terms of how much does a PAX booth cost? You need to get in the before times, how much did a PAX booth cost? How much was it to get a TV, a charger cord, a table, chairs? Everything has a cost, either in terms of time or money. So asking around, getting plugged into the game community, even asking publishers, because often they want to tell you, hey, this is actually getting localization for this type of game is actually going to cost you $20,000. do you have that money? And if not, what are you prioritizing or deprioritizing to make this happen if localization is a major part of your plans? It all matters. It all comes together. Don't take anything for granted.
Mhm. And lightning round, we got to go really quickly. Brian.
How do I make this quick? I think developers really need to consider the fit they have with the publishers they're trying to court. From a publisher point of view, we look at market risk. How your title fits into the overall market. What's the risk that it'll sell gangbusters or whether it'll fail, versus execution risk, which is like what Lindsay talked about earlier, like your production plan and how you execute it, but also who you are as a team. Like, do you all vibe together, and do we as a publisher vibe with you? Because if picking on a point I think Tanya brought up earlier, if you can't show us how you're excited for your game, that's going to be a real bad fit.
David.
I mean, I'm just gonna link onto what Brian said too, real fast. Like, if a publisher takes you on, you're in a relationship now. This isn't like, oh, your game comes out in like 3 months or whatever. It's like, no, you're probably working together for at least 2 years or something like that. So what I would say is, make the game that you want to make. Don't pitch a game that you think is going to be attractive to a publisher. Like, if you want to make some really cool, like, niche strategy game, but Slay the Spire / Monster Train games are the hot thing, so I'm just going to make that instead. Don't do that. Make the thing you want to make. Don't try to make a game that you're not passionate about just because you think a publisher might pick it up.
And Chris.
Yeah, I think everybody already answered the question, but yeah, just to add, I think you need to do your own research, right? So not doing your research, that would be a big mistake. Research in terms of like your market research, who's your target market, target audience, and then the publisher, like Brian and David already mentioned, like what kind of publisher you're pitching. Do you have a fit with them? And in terms of like cohesive and stuff like that. So yeah, do your research before.
Okay. And before we close, just want to let everyone have a chance to like say what they're working on or promote anything. We'll go back in reverse order. Chris.
We're developing a Space for the Unbound with Mochiken Studio from Surabaya, which is it's an adventure game set in 90s Indonesia that tells a story about a boy and a girl, and how do they have a relationship and overcome anxiety, depression, and stuff like that. And it's based on our own childhood experience growing up in Indonesia, so it's going to be something interesting to show and to play. Yeah.
Sounds fun. David.
Star Renegades comes out September 8th. It's like looks like a JRPG, but it's like this insanely good tactical strategy game where none of that RNG stuff. Everything is laid out for you. If you lose, it's on you. So check it out. Beautiful pixel art. Go Canada.
Okay. Brian.
Please look forward to our upcoming action RPG, No Place for Bravery. Again, also beautiful pixel art and a brutal, heavy Dark Souls-like combat, and we'll have more to share about it in the coming weeks, months, maybe weeks.
Okay. Tanya.
Yeah. We're going to be releasing a mystery game where you find the contradictions in testimonies from witnesses, called Lucifer Within Us. You're a digital exorcist, and that's coming out in October because it's spooky. And then Boyfriend Dungeon will be coming out in some after that, where you date your weapons from the dungeon. So yeah, follow Kid Fox Games and Dwarf Fortress someday, but you can look it up for yourself.
A lot of games. Lindsay.
Yeah, Spiritfarer from Thunder Lotus just released last week, a little cozy management game about death. We've got Welcome to Elk coming shortly after. I think, I don't know, remember what's announced sometime this fall. And that's a lovely little story game. And then the Red Lantern's also coming out this fall. So we got a packed little set coming up. So we're looking for some interesting games and story takes. They all have their own unique angles, and lots more coming over the next couple of years.
Wonderful. Zalivir?
I'm doing a wild amount of stuff, including comics now, which is a new adventure. But the major things I would say is Wishlist Skatebird, a game about being a bird on a skateboard and doing your best on Steam right now, as well as an Airport for Aliens currently run by dogs, which is an open world comedy adventure game about traveling a universe of simulated airports run by stock photo dogs and solving their problems. Tanya, you were right. Don't make an open world game. Just don't do it.
Well, I want to thank everyone for coming. I really appreciate you taking time out of your schedule for this. I also want to thank Josh Altman for helping me record the backup, Chris Wolf, those awesome guys for encouraging me to do this panel, and the PAX Online staff for putting this together in this weird, challenging time. I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their PAX, and thank you all.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
See ya.
Thank you. See ya.
Hello everyone, this is Kevin from Treasure Coast Games, here to give you a quick introduction to our game, Hamster Scramble. Hamster Scramble is a brand new fusion between two familiar genres, a platformer and a match 3 puzzle game. It's separated into two distinct sections, the puzzle boards up above and the platforming stage below. In most puzzle games, you just have the game board and throw pieces at it from a static location. In Hamster Scramble, however, you have full control over a character in the stage below. It is also here that the hamsters will scramble. The hamsters enter from the top of the stage via pipes running up the sides of the area, and loop back up when they reach the bottom. In order to make matches on the puzzle board, players will have to chase down and catch the hamsters. Each hamster has a color, and when caught, becomes a ball of the same color carried by the player. The player can then aim and throw the ball at the board to try and make matches. Making matches sends orbs at the opponent's board, filling up a meter that adds a line when full, pushing the opponent's board downward. If a player's board hits the center line, they lose. The platforming and puzzles themselves are rather straightforward, so I'll skip to the fun part, swapping. In Hamster Scramble, making matches isn't the only way to attack your opponent. Players also have the ability to swap into their opponent's side of the stage for a limited time. While there, you can harass your opponent and disrupt their game plan by throwing balls at their board, stealing their hamsters for yourself, or straight up finishing them off. Players can defend themselves from an invading opponent by attacking them, which will knock their hamsters out of their hands and stun them for a short time. Finding the right times and positions to swap is key to getting the most out of it. Each stage in Hamster Scramble has its own unique look, platform layout, and mechanics, such as slippery ice platforms and bubbles that catch hamsters and carry them upward. Players will have to adjust their strategies depending on which stage they are playing in. In our demo here at PAX Online, Up to 4 players can enjoy local and online multiplayer in 4 of the game's stages. There's also the Hamster Village to explore, and a taste of the game's single-player content as well. So please come try out the game and have a great time at PAX Online.
Hi, I'm KA, Community Manager at Milky Tea, an indie game development studio based in Liverpool, UK. I'm here to introduce you to our most recent game, Hyper Brawl Tournament. The universe's greatest heroes have been summoned to compete in a showdown for the ages to find the next protector of the universe. Smash, brawl, and score your way to victory in relentless, high adrenaline PvP arena battles from 1 to 4 players. What does all that mean? Let's take a look. Before each match, players must choose their perfect loadout from 12 unique heroes across 3 different hero types, as well as 8 unique weapons that all allow for different tactics and styles of play. Every match plays out in a best of 3, with each round lasting 90 seconds. Your objective is to outscore your opponent, and if there's no clear winner when the time is up, the match goes into sudden death, and the first goal wins. You've got a number of tools to help secure your victory, but it's all about how you use them. Your most basic move is your throw. This is fused with an ability called Hypercurve that gives you complete control over the ball, allowing you to change its course mid-air. You can also pass the ball directly to your player or AI teammate, which allows you to quickly move the ball from one flank to the other. You're also able to perform a dive, which is ideal for intercepting the ball. Next up is combat. Beyond being able to knock out opponents by throwing the ball at full force, you're also able to both punch and kick. The punch allows you to attack in place, which is handy for trying to steal the ball at its current location. The kick, however, allows you to travel across the arena as you dish out the damage. Hyper Brawl is an arena-based sports brawler that you can play either alone or with friends. For new players, we've got 3 different training modes. The Trials teach you the core mechanics, the Advanced Trials test your skills and everything you've learned, and Free Play lets you practice without constraints. In Arcade mode, you can jump into heart-pounding local multiplayer matches from 1 to 4 players. On top of that, the Party system allows you to invite your friends into private matches that let you take your rivalries online. If you want to play alone, the single-player campaign lets you build your own team to compete in league and cup tournaments to become the greatest team in the universe. If you're looking for a real challenge and want to show off your skills, you can take on the world in the online Blitz mode, where you face off against friends and strangers alike, build your win streak, and brawl to top the worldwide leaderboards. Hypercurve is one of the game's core mechanics, and it lets you control the ball mid-air. Using this ability, every match becomes considerably less predictable, and allows you to score a goal from pretty much anywhere in the arena, especially if your opponent didn't see it coming. The Hypercurve can be used anytime you throw the ball, and allows you to control the ball's trajectory around obstacles and players alike. Think of it like a superpower that keeps your opponent on their toes. The more power you add to your throw, the less control you'll have over the Hypercurve itself, so you must carefully consider how and when to use it. times where the match may not be going your way, you can channel the Hyperforce, which gives your heroes superhuman power and the ability to launch their rivals out of the arena to help ensure a last-minute comeback. To acquire this ability, your heroes need to take damage, either.
Hey, hi, and welcome to the PAX Overwatch Diversity Panel. I am Jen Cohn, and joining me is my fabulous group of castmates. We have 7 of my castmates from Overwatch who are all here to say hello. You want to say hi, guys?
Yeah.
Hi. Hi.
Hello.
Perfect. We're going to go around and introduce ourselves. So as I said, I'm Jen Cohn, and I do the voice of Farah in Overwatch. I'm looking at Caro. Do you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, I'm Carolina Rabasa, the voice of Sombra Online.
Crispin?
Hi there. I'm Crispin Freeman, and I play the voice of Winston in Overwatch.
Keith?
Keith Silverstein, voice of Torbjörn, ready to work.
Paul?
I'm Paul Nakauchi, and I'm the voice of Hanzo.
And Anjali?
I'm Anjali Bhamani, and I am the voice of Symmetra.
And finally, Benz.
Always saving the best for last. Benz Antoine, the voice of Baptiste.
Thank you, guys. This is so nice, guys. We are all in this together. Perfect. So I know, perfect. So this was a very appropriate panel to assign to us because, as we all know, Overwatch is a very diverse game, and that's been a focus of Blizzard's in creating this game. And they put together a cast of characters from all over the world with all different kinds of backgrounds. Does anyone want to start by talking about their character's background? And specifically, if there's anything in your own background that relates to your character? Caro.
Hi. You know, Sombra is Mexican and I'm not. I'm Colombian, but living in New York, auditioning for a bunch of voiceover stuff, they always needed Mexican accent. So I felt like I connected to that. But the cool thing about the Overwatch community is that they've kind of embraced the Latina aspect of that in Overwatch. I mean, I know Reaper's also Hispanic, but Sombra's the only one who speaks Spanish. So I feel like we all connect on that level. Like, it doesn't have to be that you're Mexican to really love Sombra. And I feel like I meet so many Puerto Ricans and Hondurans and Argentinians who love Sombra because of the Spanish aspect. And then there's just some cultural things that make sense for all of Central and South America. And that's where we've connected. Like, there's all these jokes about like Sombra's, you know, parents maybe throwing a flip-flop at her because that's a very typical Latino thing. Like, your mom gets mad and she's gonna like chuck a flip-flop at you. So that's called the chancla. So I think it just goes across all of any Spanish speakers. And so I feel like I've connected with her on that level. And there's just something about the language that I think connects everybody to it, which is really special.
Yeah, I think across the board, some of the coolest connections with people's backgrounds in this game is the fact that a lot of the languages have been brought in for so many of the characters. Even those of us, I know he's not here, but those of us who maybe don't speak the language, Johnny Cruz, once they decided, he actually learned to speak the Brazilian for his role in order to be able to create that authenticity. And I thought that was really, really special.
He did?
He learned the Brazilian. Yeah. Wow. He worked so hard, and that is not an easy, I mean, that is not easy to speak Brazilian Portuguese. It is like, I've got feijoada, that's what I got, and abraço, that's it. I'm like, I can talk about the food, that's all I got. As far as Symmetra's background, I'm Indian American, so I definitely connect with her on that level. And there is such a high value in Indian culture placed on STEM fields. And so the fact that she was born in the slums, ends up connected with a dubious company, but with a company that is using technology and using science and using that for ostensibly for the world's good, I think is a really, really cool thing, because so many people in my family are connected that way as well. And then of course, speaking the Hindi is just so much fun. This is a little known fact that I like to tell people, but when she got her Hindi ultimate, when it was no longer the boring teleporter online and it changed to Yahi Param Vastavik Tahe, specifically, I was told in the booth, and I believe it was Michael Chu who said this is your justice reigns from above.
Yay!
So all connected to you there, Miss Farr.
Love it.
Yeah.
Keith?
I was going to say, I connect with Torbjorn actually on a couple of levels, just in terms of being a father. I connect with Torbjorn on his optimism and his practicality. In fact, when I was setting up for this, I was trying to get some cool wireless little earbuds, and it just wasn't working. And I said, just give me what I know already works. And that just feels like a very Torbs thing. Now, Torbjorn is Swedish. And when we started recording for him, I had no idea what... I'm adopted. Let's state that first off. So a lot of my ancestry, I'm still learning. I'm on 23andMe, and I'm finding out new stuff all the time. And I have since being cast for Torbjorn found out that I am Scandinavian, and they are still trying to figure out exactly from where. So there's still hope that I may actually be Swedish because I'm just about everything else. So
Nice.
That's amazing.
Isn't that crazy?
Yes, totally wild. Paul?
Hi. Yes. Well, of course, Hanzo is Japanese, and I am Japanese American. I was born here. My parents were born here, but I have a very ethnically rich culture, background. My grandmother was from Japan, and so I have a lot of connection there. Although I don't speak Japanese fluently, because my parents didn't really speak Japanese to us when I was growing up.
Mm-hmm.
They were kind of like would only speak it when they didn't want us to understand stuff. And,
I think that's typical of so many immigrant families.
Yeah.
Like Yiddish is dead because of that, because that was the secret language that you didn't say to the kids.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I learned some Japanese when I was older, and I actually took Japanese, so, that's the background of Hanzo, which I really enjoy playing immensely, and going to Japan a couple of years ago, it was like really amazing because a lot of the scenes, in the background is so taken from places right in Japan, right in Tokyo and stuff. So it was really neat.
You were there during Sakura season too.
Yeah, I was
with
there
the cherry
during
blossoms,
Sakura season.
which
Yes,
is just like the Hanamura map.
Yes,
where you see the cherry blossoms just falling
just
everywhere. It
falling.
was
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah. We were very lucky because we were there for the peak of the season, so it was like incredible.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
Benz?
Yes. For me, of course, whenever I open my my social media, I get messages from people that I can't believe this guy speaks Creole. For them, I mean, that's the exciting part for me is when I was when Andrea started to poke around Montreal to see if she could find somebody who was Haitian, as I am, same as Baptiste. But that's pretty much where it ends. I've never, yes, I'm fluent in Creole, but I have never been to Haiti. So it wasn't so much me connecting to the character based on the background of Baptiste and stuff like that, because there's no connection there. But the connection for me was Haitian, of course, but doing an accent, a French accent in English was kind of tricky, right? Even with the name itself, at first, my mom was mad at me because she was like, how could you make such a big mistake? I said, what was the mistake? She said, well, how you tell people your name is Baptiste? You should say Baptiste. And I'm like, well, I should say Baptiste if I was speaking in French, but it's sort of, in English, there's not really that many silent P's. So right there, you see how many you're so-called connected. You're from you have the same, born in the same country, speak the same language, and just with my mother and me, she's like, you're wrong. You did it wrong, and I'm like, no, actually, I believe I did it right because when Andrea asked me the question, she was speaking to me in English, I was performing in English. So my instinct was, okay, I'm going to say the name as an Anglophone would say it and not necessarily say it like a French person would say it. And, since then, a lot of people online sort of supported that view. Of course, they love the game, so that doesn't hurt. But yeah, it's definitely, it's been an amazing journey for me. As most of you know my story, this is my first voiceover gig. So I'm just a rookie, following you guys' lead. So it's just amazing to be part of such a great family and a great community, not just with you guys, but with the fans as well. So yeah, so I don't necessarily connect with him in that sense, but there's a lot of him in me, especially the dancing. I think me and him dance the same.
Love it.
I just have a question about Creole. So exactly what is Creole in terms of the combination of, I mean, it's French.
Oh, it's basically broken French.
Okay.
So it's like, it's like someone who speaks French. If you speak Creole to them, they sort of maybe can understand because the verbs are from French, right? Are based in French. But then they break it up. They broke it up to make sure that I don't want to get too deep in history, but just to make sure that the French soldiers that they were colonized by would not understand what they were saying. So they would speak the French and then break it up. So it's very similar to a lot of Caribbean countries in that regard, that they break up. The English Caribbean, they broke up the English, and the French Caribbean, they broke up.
But so what?
Doesn't it vary depending on the country you're in? Like, isn't Creole slightly different depending on where it's spoken?
It is slightly different.
Okay.
But again, the verbs again are based, come from the same place. So you can find, if you're from Dominica, or if you're from another country that speaks Creole, like maybe Mauritius, there's people who speak Creole from Mauritius, but they understand, and actually they can understand us from Haiti more than we can understand them. So I don't know if it's maybe just a strict numbers game, because there's so many Haitians around the world, and they're very confident people. So they're everywhere. They're in Miami, they're in New York, they're in Montreal, they're in Toronto, they're in Vancouver, they're everywhere. So in that regard, we feel lucky that way, because the other Creole speakers tend to adapt to the base of our Creole, which is kind of cool.
But so if it's a hybrid between French, what's the other languages that it's a hybrid with?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. There's a lot. There's some English words. There's some Spanish words. There's a lot of it's a lot of mix. For example, I'll give you an example. In Creole, if something smells bad, or if your feet smell bad, they call it mayas, mayas. And if you really slow that down, that will sound like
my ass.
My ass.
There we go.
That's hilarious.
So,
oh my God, I love it.
Yeah. So there's a lot of mixes, and you learn every day. The more you hang out with older people, they teach you things that you didn't know. Obviously, since I've never really been there, and I've never even been educated in French either. So I came from a very unique place as well, in that I knew I was right in what I was saying, because I started school in English. That's all I knew. French I picked up, of course, as a kid, but I never went to school. So when the question came to me about the name, I just answered instinctively, and I knew that was right, even though everyone in my family still thinks I'm wrong. But that's something that a story of my life.
I was gonna say that's the same. That's the same thing. Whenever I try to speak Hindi around my mom, she's like, "No, it's yahi param vastavikta hai." And I say, "Yahi param vastavikta hai." No, yahi param vastavikta hai. And I'm like, we're saying the same thing. I don't see the difference. But to this day, it's just there's a little something. It's just a little something. Oh, mom.
Crispin, did you want to chime in with anything?
Sure. When I was
your connection to being a space monkey.
Sure.
When I was called on to play Winston, this gorilla from the moon, I reached deep into my space elf background and thought, yeah, this is perfect for me. I'm an elf from space, and it seems obvious that I would be hanging out on the moon with Winston. One of the things that I really appreciated years ago, we had a United Nations of Overwatch panel. And everyone who was in the panel that year, they put little flags out where they were sitting with all the different flag countries, right? The flags of the different countries that their characters represented. And they made one for me, which I kept, which is a moon flag.
Stop it.
Oh, that's great.
I still have my little moon flag because Winston's from the moon. Yes, I mean, I think, well, the thing that I think that I really identify with Winston is his idealism and this notion of sort of looking down at Earth from the moon. is this notion of what they call in philosophy the fusion of horizons. When you look at things from enough different perspectives, it starts to fuse into this one sort of vision, and you sort of see it as holistically rather than as pieces against themselves. And if there's anything that my background is, even though I look like a pretty normal white guy, on my mother's side of the family, I'm English, Scottish, German, possibly some Native American thrown in, and on my dad's side of the family, it's Russian, Romanian, and Polish Jew. And then I was raised in Chicago by a black woman for much of my life who came from the south side of Chicago. I would run between downtown Chicago to the wilderness of Montana. I would also go behind the Iron Curtain. My family used to go to Czechoslovakia during the Soviet occupation. We would help out artists over there. So I was sort of dipping back and forth between Western democracy and Soviet occupation and oppression. And I was also bouncing between the north side and south side of Chicago, which is very segregated, white side on the north and black side on the south. And so I was constantly having to jump between different frames of reference, and I could never privilege one over the other. So that's the thing I'm probably most grateful for in my upbringing, is that at a very young age, I had to learn, no, there isn't one way to look at this. I have to be able to jump to different perspectives. And so when somebody like Winston comes along, who basically looks down on the earth and goes, I see how this works. Sure, this sounds great. And it's like, well, yeah, that makes perfect sense that I'd end up playing a character sort of like that.
Well, I too am 1/4 space elf, so it's a very small world that we share. But you're half Ashkenazi Jew, Eastern European Jew. I didn't answer in the beginning. I'm 100% New York Ashkenazi Jew, and my Middle Eastern accents are mediocre at best. So it was very much a lucky break when I got cast as Farah, and they explained that she came from this very international background, and so I got to be more pan-Mediterranean than specifically Middle Eastern, because I could have done a mean Israeli accent, but my Arabic accents are not all that much. But what I love about Farah is her relationship to her mother, it being complicated, her being so human, and that she's the great uniter, and she's the one who really pulls everyone together to work together. And she too is someone who wants to see everyone working together in a team and not necessarily be divided by their differences. So it's beautiful.
What's really lovely about, I just wanted to piggyback on that. What's really lovely about what you just said, Crispin, and also what all of you have said too, is that, I know this is a diversity panel. We tend in the world to think of diversity in terms of either race or at least, our ethnicity, or because we're all the human race. So that's not really accurate. So either our ethnicity or maybe our sexual orientation or whatever, like very specific structured things. But I think what's so beautiful about this game is that the diversity comes more from, there are so many unique characteristics to each character that create who they are. They are the sum of their experiences and the sum of so many different things. So it's not just about, oh, that's the Indian one, that's the Mexican one, that's the Swedish one. It's not just that. It's that all of them come from such diverse experiences, and that we learn so much about them through the game and through the lore. And that all of us have something that we have in common with them. Crispin, you said the idealism, and that Jen, that she's the great uniter. And for me, Symmetra, I love so much how much she has taken her history and her difficulties in her past and used them to use them as fodder to inspire her to make the world a better place, which it can go either way, and we see that in stories all the time. And so for me, that's something that's such a cool, unique thing about her. And we see that difference in each one of the characters in this game, who's gone to the dark side, who's gone to the light side, who's not sure, who's still trying to figure it out. I think diversity speaks in that way too, not just in terms of the structures that we all know of, specifically, socially, internationally, all of that.
There's been so much talk lately in the union and in our industry about diversity in casting. And I wondered if you guys have had specific instances where you've either felt supported in that way or felt that it was something being paid attention to in a positive way or in a negative way. Did you ever feel like you were being asked to do something inappropriate? Do you have specific opinions about that? I mean, I know that I was recently listening to a conversation between a bunch of people who were talking about wanting there to be much more specificity in casting. And yet our union, I think, has supported people of all different backgrounds getting to play different characters of different backgrounds, because that's the beauty of voice acting. Does anyone have feelings about that? Benz, jump on in.
Yes, it's interesting because, as you all know, this is my first voice gig. But since that time, I've been approached by many different agents and whatever. So I signed on with this agent in New York. I signed on with Buckwald, right? And they were, well, we'll talk about that after because that has since changed. But during that time, I was with Buckwald, and they basically, the voice department, they were like, we want you to be more black for a lot of the stuff I was reading for. And in my mind, I'm like, wait a minute, what do I sound like already? So now, I come from, most of my work, 99% of it has been on camera. So you're already restricted. Obviously, you're on camera. You can't hide. You are what you are, which is great. Then when this came, I'm like, oh, this is nice. I can go into, doing different things and, having fun and not being trapped in this 6'4" black guy body, which is not bad, by the way. But but I figured I could explore, artistically, creatively, just go out and do different things. And the first thing the guy tells me is, no, I need you to sound like more like black. And I'm like, I didn't really have any rebuttal. I didn't really know if is this the right way or the wrong way? Is this how it goes down in voice? So I didn't really know how to react to that. And I actually never mentioned this to anyone until today. I felt like in my heart, I'm like, it didn't feel right, or anyway, it didn't feel like something that I wanted to restrict myself in that way. I didn't feel like that was what I wanted to do. And ultimately that kind of like what led to us not really working together anymore. Because if there's one thing after 30 years of being in this business, you have to be happy because the journey is too long to be results oriented. You know what I mean? So that was a really weird thing. I'd love to hear how it goes down for you guys in that respect, since you guys have a lot more experience.
Crispin?
So some of you may know that I run a podcast on voice acting called Voice Acting Mastery. And in one of the interviews, I did a very long interview with Phil Lamar, talking not only about his experience as an actor, but I took extra time to talk to about his experiences as an African-American actor trying to deal with the casting challenges that he faces. And it's something that I've actually had to work with my students as well. In addition to the podcast, I teach students. And it's very interesting, Ben, because I had a African-American gentleman come to my class, and he was a really good actor, and he was of African descent. I mean, he was from Africa. And so his accent was very unique, and it was a blend. It was a blend of sort of sounding like he was African and also American. He was sort of mixed, as most people's accents are when they come to America and they start learning English. Some of the words they say are more in their native accent, and some are more American sounding.
Absolutely.
And so he would get up to do characters, and I would have to say, he was a wonderful actor. His name was Bamba John Bamba. And I said, Bamba John, you're going to have to deal. I understand that Hollywood is painted as this very liberal place, but when it comes to casting, they can be really conventional and really sort of closed-minded about stuff because they're so afraid of alienating an audience. They want to make it simple, and which means that they often go for stereotypes. And I said, right now, your accent is in the middle. You're not vanilla and you're not chocolate. You're like the swirl at the yogurt place, right? and the swirl flavor confuses the white people who are casting. They don't know where to put you. So you either need to sound like you come from South LA and like you're from Compton, or you need to sound like you're in Black Panther, right? You need to sound like you are full African. And he went, oh, I get it, right? He had to make that decision about one way or the other. Guess what he got cast as? He's in Black Panther, right? He was an actual on-camera actor in Black Panther like a year or so after he took class with me, playing an African warlord, because he got it. Now I gave him those tools because I want him to succeed. It is sad that that's where we are, right? That we're still sort of fighting with that. And even Phil Lamar says in the interview that I do with him that even when he's trying not to, quote, sound black, that he will get cast as the one African American character in the animated show. So I think the challenge is that when we're dealing with live action stuff, there's a lot more pressure for diversity, and there's a lot more pressure to let people be authentically who they are. When we get into animation and video games, I don't know if it's because the demographic that they're shooting for is younger, and so they start to think more stereotypically, and they're not willing to take the same risks because they just want to be able to easily slot people into their character types. But it is a challenge, and what I think what's going to solve it is more diverse writing, right?
Yes.
Rather than trying to shoehorn things into old storytelling tropes, we need new stories. We need new stories that have these more diverse characters, and so we don't have to mess around with this kind of thing. But we can play with that. I see that in something like Steven Universe, which I was honored to work on. You know, where they play with all sorts of diversity. It just got announced in Owl House, this really cool Disney film, or Disney TV show, animated TV show, that the main character is bisexual. Wow, that's cool. You know, that's really nice to have going on. But they also get a lot of pushback. Disney got a lot of pushback about that, and even the woman who's producing on it said, you know, I'm bi. I wanted my main character to be bi, and the executives at Disney said you can't do that. And then somehow, like a year into production, they said, okay, we think you can do that, right? So even in a place like Disney, which is usually, in terms of its politics, very LGBTQ friendly when it comes to their parks and when it comes to everything they're doing sort of physically in the world, in their storytelling, sometimes they can get really conventional and sort of conservative about stuff. So it's tough. We've got to keep boosting the voices and the creators who are trying to do more diversity and get different types of characters in the storytelling, so that people realize that these people exist and deserve a voice as anyone else does.
Absolutely.
Paul?
My experience has been, you know, the irony of doing voiceovers as a Asian American performer is that it's great that they are actually using Asian performers now, because in the past, you know, a lot of times Asian voices were done by white people. So it's great because, like, years ago, I was getting hired because I was like one of the few Asian, you know, voiceover people around. But in terms of doing other voices that aren't Asian, I can count on like one hand in terms of, you know, voices that I've done that aren't, you know, and I don't particularly sound Asian in my normal speaking voice, you know, but I've done like maybe little voices in like in a larger, you know, series or something. I've done a couple voices that weren't Asian, but that's about it, you know. It's always sort of like the samurai voice, or the, like I did for Carmen Sandiego. He was another kind of like a ninja character. And the interesting thing is that they don't necessarily want someone who has a really authentic like Japanese accent, because it's hard for them to understand. It's hard for people to understand. So, you know, they asked me to like, well, can you take it out more? Can you take it out? You know, to the point where it doesn't even really sound like a Japanese accent to me. But then they'll be go, oh, that's it, you know, and it's just like a tiny
like a reference to it, like a nod to it.
Just a tiny nod, like, you know, saying your ahs like, ah, you know, I'm going to, you know. Just tiny little modifications, but I mean, it would be nice that at some point that you know, we would be able to be seen, and I mean, literally everybody should be able to do, you know, all kinds of voices, right? Because you don't see who, you know, the person, right? But that's still that way.
That still is an issue.
Yeah, that still is an issue.
And
I actually want to speak to the flip side of the experience, because even though, you know, after being in theater and then being in film and TV and being here, like I've run the gamut of extremely offensive experiences. And then now more and more, as the world, I feel like, is changing, despite this kind of intense struggle that we are having in the world between between different mindsets. I'm actually seeing a really cool wave of openness, at least in the auditions that I'm getting and the roles that I'm getting, and in the complexity of things as we start to create them. A character that I did in Apex Legends just came out, and you know, that much like Overwatch, that is set in a future, so there's already an element of fantasy to it, and yet they're still doing everything that they can, just like Overwatch, to make sure that they are honoring the ethnicity and the background and the complexity of all the characters they write. And they've decided that this character, you know, the way into this character is she's Indian and then moved to the UK, and she's really scrappy, and so she has all the Cockney slang, but she speaks with her native accent as an Indian. And because accents are so personal to everybody's experience, and that is our way as voice actors to convey so much of the complexity of the person's experience, I find it very interesting, because no matter what, I feel like no matter what you do, there's going to be someone who says, oh, well, someone from there wouldn't speak like that. And you're like, but someone with this experience, it's a different thing. You know, my mom has been in this country for what, 50, 51 years. She still has an Indian accent, but she speaks with American slang. She speaks with American vernacular. And so I have found it very hopeful, and I mean, I found it very inspiring to know that there is so much attention paid in our sessions to being like, well, this is the background of the character. Talk to us about what you think, and let's talk about how we want to hone, how we want to fine tune what is the specific accent choice and what is the specific vocabulary choice. Because really the combination of those two things, and then obviously the flavor that you give it as an actor, the combination of those two things is what's going to make this character unique. And I'm really excited by the fact that that is happening. And it happened with Symmetra when we were working on her sound, that she was much more highly educated British Indian sounding, even though, I mean, highly educated British educated trained Indian, because obviously, you know, a lot of Indian folks either go to school in the UK, or that's the training that they have in their own homeland, is it comes from the UK. So just that yummy stuff is actually being talked about in the sessions. And I think people in consumers and gamers and people in the world are starting to come along to, there is no one right accent. There is no, because everybody sounds different. We're all here in the US, well, except for Ben's here in Canada, but we're all here in the US and we all sound completely different. So why would it not be the case for anywhere else? And that excites me. I will say also, one very sad experience that I had, sad for me, was an interesting development, I think, in the casting world, is that I was cast in a project as a character who looked Indian but didn't have an accent. And about halfway through the recording process, a few sessions in, they decided to change the character to look either, I don't know what they landed on, but it was either going to be Black or Latina. And they said, we have to recast you because you're neither of those things. And this, even though she didn't sound that way, they decided we want to go with someone who is of that background, even though we're not going to see them. And it was a shock to my system, because I'm used to that in TV and film, but I'm not used to that in voiceover. So it's a double-edged sword as an actor, if that is going to happen. But I can see how it might be a sign of progress for us in general in casting. That people are now just being much more aware of, let's be true to who we're trying to cast here. You know?
Get that. Keith?
Yeah, it's a complicated issue. I think in a perfect world, you know, like Ben's was kind of saying, it'd be great that we could all just do any voice we want to do. I mean, creatively, it's fun to be able to explore, you know, any avenue. And I've spent a lot of my career doing that. I don't think I've been pigeonholed in anything in particular. I have had studios that only call me in for Black parts, and I have other studios that go, oh, wait, you're Black? I had no idea. So you have you know, it's all over the board there. And when I say in a perfect world, it would be that way, this is clearly not a perfect world. We have a lot of changes to make. And I think that the studios are looking for authenticity is generally a good thing. It's a positive thing. We all can look back at Hollywood at the on-camera stuff all the way back to blackface and Breakfast at Tiffany's and all these examples of white actors stereotypically playing people of color. And even if they had good intentions, which a lot of those, I mean, who knows what they were thinking at the time. I mean, that stain has lasted to this day and will continue to continue on. And so it's not a perfect world. And I've had fans and I've heard discussions and people say the actor should always be authentic, but also how feasible is that? I mean, let's say you're doing a video game and you're supposed to play 20 characters in this game or 10 characters or whatever the case is. A character may only have a few lines. Do they really have to get an actor in that's that exact ethnicity? How important is that? It gets complicated, but I do like seeing that now authenticity is important. One other thing, because I think Crispin, you talked about the writing changing, and I think that's a big deal too. And also as an audience, I think we need to change and we need to be forced to change. I went with my family to Disneyland and we saw the Frozen live show. And Anna, as a child, was white. And when she was grown, she was played by a Black actress. It took the audience all of about 5 to 10 seconds to get over that and to move on and to enjoy it. And it didn't matter in the slightest. And I'd never seen that done before. It wasn't done for any particular reason, but it didn't matter. And I think when the writing changes and the audiences change and we start to realize that, I mean, there are times where authenticity is very, very, very important. And there are other times if it's not spoken, the lead character doesn't have to be considered Caucasian. It could be whatever. But I think in general, when you write something, you go, here's the script. If it's not mentioned, we all go, oh, white, white, white. And that's how it's cast. So if the writers are opening up and the developers are opening up to other ideas, that's going to open it up for everybody and everyone will have equal opportunities. Let's hope. And we'll still get some opportunities to flex our creativity and play some different roles as well.
But it seems like it's very sort of case by case basis because you were talking about Disney with Frozen. And then just like a couple of years ago, Little Mermaid went out and this Asian girl was playing Ariel. And they got a lot of flack because, oh my gosh, Ariel isn't supposed to be Asian, but she's a mermaid. I mean, why couldn't she be? It's not like she's a mermaid. So, and they got all this kind of like hate about that. So it really is. It just depends on the project. It depends on I mean, that was maybe a couple of years ago. So maybe that would have changed. By now.
No, I think it's going to be challenging for audiences. And I think the more times that envelope is pushed, the better. I think people have to stick their neck out and they have to do it because we have to grow. I mean, how many years of television and film and stage have we all seen, that's been a certain way? All those stereotypes perpetuated constantly. I watch old movies with my kids all the time. I mean, just when I say old, I mean even 80s and 70s. And there's something sexist and racist in every classic I have watched from that period. It's unbelievable. It's not necessarily so bad that we have to turn it off, but it's enough that I have to mention it to my daughters and kind of explain why they did that.
Like 16 Candles or
exactly. I just was watching that with Mickey, same thing, and having to explain that was the norm at that time, and we don't even think of it having been that way, but that's how it was. Crispin?
Yeah, Alexander Hamilton. How dare we have him be Latino? I mean, why would you ever want to do that, right? We just need to stop. Let's just cancel that. Like, that's just not authentic, right? Of course, it's ridiculous. I think one of the things I want to chime in about is this notion of challenging the audience, Keith, because I think that's very interesting. In the world of sci-fi, that is one of the features of science fiction storytelling. The people who read science fiction want to be challenged. Because one of the common trends in science fiction is an expansion of what we consider our in-group. Often in science fiction, there is storytelling where there's an us versus them storytelling. And the storytelling says, no, they are not a them. They are also an us, that we are going to extend to this other race or species or aliens or whatever, the same rights and privileges that we would give to any sentient being. So whether it's Star Trek in the 60s, having this sort of international crew and having the first interracial kiss on television, or Lieutenant Commander Data, who is an android who we decide is part of Starfleet, or deciding we're going to make peace with the Klingons, or anything else, right? One of the features of science fiction is that you are challenging your notions of how things are supposed to be, and you are expanding your notion of what it means to be human. Who qualifies as having human rights or the rights of sentient beings? And anyone who thinks that's not the case or wants to complain about that obviously didn't read X-Men. What the hell is wrong with you, right? This is the whole point of this storytelling. And most superhero storytelling, which I would argue Overwatch is sort of superhero storytelling.
Yes.
Most superhero storytelling lives in this science fiction world. And so I think what we're coming up against is that there are people who maybe are not science fiction fans, who are used to what we might call just sort of normal fiction storytelling with everyday people doing their everyday things. They may not be used to being challenged this way. Well, welcome to the planet. You know, there used to be a time where you could think, well, what I do doesn't affect somebody on the other side of the world. Well, it does now. Right? You eating a hamburger from McDonald's can affect the Amazon rainforest. You and how you drive your car and use petrol or gasoline affects people in the Middle East. You and how you use your chemical fluorocarbons and sprays and air conditioning affects the ozone layer over the Australians and the New Zealanders. Welcome to the world, guys. We're all connected. And so this idea of having to expand the notion of us is just part of how we're going to have to survive on a limited biosphere. So yeah, I agree completely. We've got to expand it. And if science fiction can lead the way, and any of that sort of fantasy style storytelling can lead the way to an expansion of what it means to be us and stop and getting rid of this them notion, we're all going to survive better on this planet together.
And
Crispin just said it so well, and I don't know that I could even remotely. Here's what I want to add to this. The thing that I love about science fiction, the thing that I love the most about science fiction is that science fiction enables us, because it is distant enough from us that we can see it as other, but it is close enough to our experiences. Usually there is some similarity to where we are now in the world that enables us to see things that may be quite right with how we're seeing the world. And it serves to expand our view of what is possible. And that specific word makes me think of one of my favorite examples of it. And I know it's TV and film and we're talking voiceover, but the show The Expanse is such an incredible, it's an incredible science fiction show that everyone should watch to begin with. But they do such a wonderful job of pushing us into the future where, okay, no one's racist anymore. Now they're planetist because all of the races melded, but now everybody's still fighting that wanting to create an otherness within us. Because I think there is both of this there within all of us. There is a combination of a desire to unite and a desire to belong to something and to the world at large. And then there's this dark side of us that wants to say, I am me and you are you, and do this. And the struggle between that I think that's something that we all struggle with through our lives, through different phases. And I think that's part of what the problem has been, getting audiences and writers and everyone to understand how to move forward in this way. And so The Expanse does a really, really great job of saying, just like Star Trek did, of showing us the world as we see it now, showing us the world as it can be, and then showing us the struggles on the way to get there. And that's a very inspiring thing. It's like Winston's quote, or Dr. Winston's quote, Dr. Harold Winston's quote about, I'm going to get it wrong, but about dare to see the world for how you want it to be.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what science fiction is all about. And that's why I love so much. I love fantasy fiction, but it feels like it's stuck in one era usually. And science fiction feels like it moves forward. And that's why I love that so many games are set 700 years in the future, or on a different planet where we can see that potential for progress.
Cara.
Yeah, adding to all of this, I think our audiences do need to, obviously expand their minds in all of this. And I also think that casting has to work a little bit harder sometimes, because I always ran into, oh, we were casting this Latino thing and where were you? And I go, I was trying to audition, you know, for film and TV. Or, oh, we auditioned these people, we just didn't find enough Latinos. And I go, all of my actor friends are Latinos and none of them auditioned. How can you tell me you didn't find them? So as I experienced this, after I'd meet like the execs of this or the director 2 years after they shot that pilot of all Latinos and like none of my good actor friends auditioned, that's where I go, you're not trying too hard if you're telling me that in New York City and LA, you didn't find all these Latinos. Right now, yes, that's changing for sure. And I've been told for the longest time that I'm too light to play Latina. So that's been my on-camera struggle. Right now, I'm really grateful that in voiceover, they call me for that, because I think that too often they just said, oh my God, we have this white voice actor who can do 1 billion accents, which is amazing. And I love accents. Of course, I want to do them all. But for so long, it's just like we weren't getting called in to play our own people. And then there was shitty Spanish being spoken or no Spanish because, oh, they found out they didn't speak Spanish. So I think that authenticity is important so that people watching go, oh, he really is a Mexican, or he's doing a really great Mexican accent or whatever. So it's just like, I think that minorities haven't gotten to play themselves for the longest time. And so now we're doing it. And that's where I'm really grateful when I get called in to do a Hispanic accent, whatever is very stereotypical, but I'm going to do it because it's a job that I'm excited to play, you know? And on the flip side of that, I've also understood how sometimes casting also just goes, dude, this character, like she nailed the personality and what we were going for. And she's not perfectly Brazilian, which is my case right now with a character on a Riot game. Like, yeah, some fans are like, she's not Brazilian, why did you cast her? But dude, if there's just something that like you brought to the character that wasn't brought in by any other Brazilian that you did audition, there's got to be leeway to, okay, well, we're in the right continent, hopefully, or whatever. So it's just like, what are you going for? This awesome bombastic personality, or like Keith, you know, I can't imagine anybody else being Torbjorn. Because sometimes that's Johnny Cruz. Like I cannot imagine anybody else being Lucio. So we have to have that flexibility too when we love a character's personality, you know? I'm just glad, you know, Lucio isn't played by a white dude. Like at least they're in the right direction and with the right sort of
the realm.
Yeah, feel.
Paul?
Yeah, I guess I was just going to talk sort of about what Anjali was saying about the us and them thing. I mean, I think part of the thing is that is just sort of the structure of drama and theatrics is for there to be an us and them. You know, every story has sort of like, you know. So I mean, I think that is sort of just built in sort of the theatrics of scripts and things. But I guess where it has to sort of change is what we have stereotypically thought as the them. You know what I'm saying? The viewpoint has to change, and I think in changing that, that's what will make it become more equal in terms of the weight of it. Because when you always have a certain group of people being the them, you know, it sets up this power dynamic that is disenfranchising. So we need to have stories where, you know, the them is another group of people, or you know what I'm saying? So we don't always have that power dynamic struggle, you know.
I think what happens, I think that's why the next step from the step after diversity is inclusivity, right? That's the step. And it's why I love what Jeff Kaplan said when this game came out. He said, the only people we want to exclude from playing Overwatch are people who exclude other people.
Yeah.
Like that idea that there is a story, there is some aspect of every character, there's some aspect some aspect of someone that everyone can connect with, one way or the other, whether it's their ethnicity, whether it's their storyline, whether it's their shape, their size, their attitude. Everyone feels included when they see their story being told through a character they can identify with. And it's how many different ways can people identify with the characters, I think, that makes that happen. So it's not Noah's Ark, it's not one of every ethnicity, it's how many different complex characters can we show that look and sound and feel and do completely different things. That I think is that's the exciting development and I think Overwatch really did a great job doing that and kind of started this wave. And there are many other, I feel like the world is starting to come into that more and more and more.
Crispin?
This us and them thing is a challenge, right? Because we have hundreds of thousands of years of evolution that say, this is my village, and I'm going to defend my village. And those people on the other side of the mountains, I don't know what they're like, and I don't like them, and we're going to fight with them, right? So it's a massive experiment, and it takes effort and it takes work. And I'll tell you, it's the Japanese storytelling that taught me how to look at the them as an us, because it sort of depends on your cosmology and your culture. If you work in a cosmology where there is good and there is evil, and the evil is unredeemable, then that you say as evil, as them, can only be eliminated, right? Obliterated. There's no redemption of evil, right? And we see plenty of storytelling like this. Who are the good guys? Who are the bad guys? And there's no redemption of the bad guys. But if there's anything that I learned from watching Japanese animation, is that you might be able to find some sort of common ground. Astro Boy is a classic example of this. And I use this example, Superman fights Lex Luthor because Lex Luthor is evil. Now, Superman doesn't kill Lex Luthor because that would be immoral, but he jails him and he imprisons him and Lex Luthor escapes and the story continues, right? But there's no reforming of Lex Luthor. Lex Luthor's always going to be a bad guy. In Astro Boy, who is sort of the equivalent icon of comics and animation in Japan, Astro Boy, in the last iteration of him that Tezuka worked on in the 1980s, he had a brother called Atlas, who was made from the same plans as Astro Boy. So he was a little robot boy, just like Astro was. But Atlas was raised by very nefarious criminal characters who wanted to use him for bad things. And Atlas basically has a chip on his shoulder against humans. Because in the world of Astro Boy, there are the robots and the humans discriminate against the robots. They see the robots as lesser. Well, Atlas as a robot says, what are you talking about? We robots should be ruling the earth. Okay, it's not far from like a Professor X Magneto thing, right? Where Magneto feels sort of similarly. And so there's one episode in Astro Boy where the only one who can save the earth is Atlas. And Astro Boy turns to his brother basically and says, please, will you save the humans? I've been trying to be this ambassador between these two worlds to find a way for us and them to live along. And Atlas says, you know what? I'll do it. I'll do it because you're my brother. I don't like these humans, but maybe they're redeemable. Maybe there's something there. So I'm going to help them right now. And then I'm going to go off and I'm going to think about it. And I'm going to come back and tell you what I think. There's a possibility right there for some sort of understanding between the two. The notion that we're all going to look at everyone on the planet and treat them as family, that's a big emotional lift, right? Yeah. Is that really practical and feasible? I don't know. But if we constantly strive for saying, now, come on, do they have a point? Where they're coming from, do they have a point? Even if I disagree. And if they do have a point, are they just going about it in a bad way? And could we find a better way to solve whatever the problem is? Because otherwise, I don't know how we survive on this biosphere together. Yeah.
Yeah, we're not doing such a great job at the moment. So
no, because it's hard, right? It's really, really hard. Everyone keeps acting like America is a country that has always and will always exist. Hell no. We are an experiment. And we can be taken over by a very small group of very angry people. Look at Germany in the 1930s. It doesn't take much for a bunch of clowns to exacerbate people's fears and to go right back to that lizard brain, right? And go back to those old instinctive fight or flight instincts that we've evolved over hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years. It takes effort, it takes care, it takes empathy, it takes what we would call as humanity, right? Which is empathy for somebody else, to say, I want to punch you in the face, but there's gotta be some better way that we can solve this problem than ripping each other to pieces.
I think we have to wrap up.
We do?
So amazing. I know. I'm so inspired. Guys, I've said so little because it's my first time moderating any of these things on Zoom, and I'm listening, and you guys are brilliant. Let's wrap up by talking about, in our future in gaming and in Overwatch specifically, what are we hoping to see in the development of games in general and specifically in Overwatch? What are we hoping for?
More backstory. We want more
say,
Overwatch backstory.
seriously. Lore. We want more lore.
Yeah,
But truly, that is it, because the lore is what shows us the complexity of all of the characters. The more we learn about all the different things that make them them, the more we see that it's more than one thing that makes someone someone. The more unique every person is, and then the more everyone realizes, no matter what their walk of life, they are unique in their own way, and they are not alone, both at the same time. And that is what I'm really hoping people see, so that they can like get into the story that way.
Yeah. And that's what the fans really connect with is the backstories, you know. They really want more of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I think we see, like, I see Sombra as this badass who can do anything and who's not scared of anything, but she has to have a vulnerability. She has to have loved somebody at some point that she lost, and therefore now that's why she's her own agent who will, you know, screw over her own side if she needs to. Like, I think that once we understand what happened in the past with all these people and who the important, like, loves were, it makes them human, right? Because we all want to love or be loved. And be loved. So you know, the more we uncover all of that in all the characters, I think the more interesting it gets and deeper, you know.
I want to see how we include Omnix in the us. There's been gestures towards that, and we have null sector now as this sort of break off aspect of the Omnix that are causing problems. But part of me wants to know, what is the inherent nature of silicon? We sort of know how carbon-based life forms work. And we know that social animals have a sense of morality. We have mirror neurons, and we have a sense of fairness and equity. And we can measure this not only in humans, but we can measure it in chimpanzees and dogs. You know, there are people who measure morality in animals. And it's an aspect of evolution in social animals that we develop a sense of equanimity and fairness. What is the essential nature of silicon? Right? How does silicon work in an evolutionary standpoint? This is something that the Matrix was sort of teasing with, but never really solved effectively, in my opinion. The third film sort of didn't really answer it. But if Overwatch could actually address what the inherent nature of silicon is and how an artificial intelligence works in an evolutionary standpoint and finds a way to work in a society, in a social construct, we have a way forward in life.
Yeah. I love you, Crispin. Oh my God. Great. Wait, everyone, I'm so inspired.
When Crispin speaks, it makes you feel like, oh my God, what do I have in my brain?
The Oracle, the Oracle. I can't stand it. Everybody, let's go through everyone and say where people can find you and follow you. Okay, your socials. Caro, start it off.
Hi, I'm on Instagram as Ravasa. My YouTube channel is called Hispanglo-Saxon because I do a bunch of cool videos with most people here, which is great. Twitter, Carolina Ravasa. Ta-da.
Yeah, Keith.
I am on Instagram. I'm just Keith Silverstein, easy to find, and at Silver Talkie on Twitter. You can find me there usually. Yeah.
Anj.
I am Sweet Anj with 3 E's in all of the places, on the YouTube, the Twitter, the Instagram, and the Facebook. I'm Anjali Bhimani because Sweet Anj is my personal page, and all you'll find there is doggy videos.
Benz.
Yes, Facebook and everywhere is Benz Antoine, and on Instagram it's Benz Antoine Official.
Nice. Paul.
Yeah, I'm just Paul Nakauchi. Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. I'm Paul Nakauchi 1. Number
Crispin.
1.
Luckily, my name's pretty unique, so I was able to get Crispin Freeman as a handle on almost every social media platform. I will warn you, I am not a social media person, but if people really want to enjoy my content, it's my podcast is usually what I steer people to. I put a lot of energy into my podcast, so I guess I'm old school. I'm broadcasting, not so much social media, but I try to share all of my ideas and content that way.
And I'm at Hey It's Jen Cohn on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook, and on Twitch twice a week, where I have a live stream, all at Hey It's Jen Cohn. Guys, thank you so much. This has been so much fun. This is great. I'm thinking about all of this now. I'm percolating.
Yes.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for moderating, Jen.
You.
Thank you, Jen. Great to see all you guys.
See you, everyone.
Bye, guys.
I miss you guys.
Mwah.
Bye.
Mwah. Bye.
Bye.
This is 22 Racing Series. It's a future physics racer where you can drive at 1,000 plus kilometers per hour. We're using all simulated physics to create downforce that sticks you onto the track. It's a new genre of real-time strategy racing where you compete for sectors to get resources they can either spend on boost, use to upgrade your car mid-race, or use as on-track abilities that can help your team and hamper your opponents. It's a racing game where the outcome of a race is determined more by strategy and adaptation rather than just muscle memory and repetition. Where falling behind on lap 1 doesn't mean a sure loss, where there's more than one way to play and more than one way to win. We've taken it to game shows over the last 5 years, getting feedback from thousands of players. We captured some first impressions from PAX Oz to give you an idea.
Nuts.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's out of control.
That looks amazing.
A lot more in depth than I thought it would be to start, so yeah, really fun.
This was absolutely amazing. I really enjoyed the speed of my heart.
When you're going around that circle at 1,000 k's just spinning, it's nuts. It's nuts, but it's really fun, really fun. It's really competitive, it's quick, it's fast paced, everything I love, yeah.
You can find out more over at 22racingseries.com. Check out our socials, and you can get directly into the game right now over at pavilionhub.com, where we have some special access PAX Online events running where you can win prize money.
we challenge you to a Swabette showdown!
Hey, Dr. Ken Dutton Register here from Excite Science in Brisbane, Australia. Excite Science is a creative studio explaining complex science in fun ways. And at this stage, we're really focusing on cancer education, from cancer-themed escape rooms to virtual reality to AR-driven art galleries. And the project that I'm talking about today is Malignancy VR. As a cancer researcher of over 10 years, I know firsthand, talking to the general community, that there's a lot of misunderstanding and core fundamental knowledge gaps of what cancer is. And this isn't surprising because cancer is incredibly complex. But are there new technologies or new ways, new communication strategies that we can be using to engage in a broader audience to teach them about cancer? And more importantly, reach those audiences that aren't even thinking about cancer or aren't really even engaged with science in general. A good colleague of mine, Dr. Elke Hacker from the Queensland University of Technology, really wanted to explore whether virtual reality could be the answer. So to explore this idea, we partnered up with Real Serious Games. And for Malignancy VR, we wanted this as a sort of first step to show some of the challenges with modern day cancer treatments and how not all the time can they be successful. So after we decided we wanted to talk about different cancer therapies, we began talking about the different game mechanics. And this is where we came up with the different treatment guns, focusing on chemotherapy, targeted therapy, and immunotherapy. Our plans for Malignancy VR is to expand it into a multi-level game. And we're going to be doing this in conjunction with members of the community. So if this sounds of something of interest to you, head over to malignancyvr.com and sign up to be in touch. Furthermore, we want to take that game and then test it in a randomized clinical trial to robustly assess if virtual reality is an effective way to teach people about cancer, and more importantly, can it change or influence people's behavior and reduce their risk of cancer over a lifetime?
Hello there. I would like to introduce to you a cooperative, friendly, fast-paced and fun-filled game by the name of Camped Out. The first title from Inca Studios from Melbourne, Australia. Camped Out is a couch co-op game for friends and families where up to 4 players work together to set up their campsite before nightfall. Work together as a team to complete campsites and unlock further areas in the game world. Throw into the mix some hazards from natural environments, such as bears, critters, ghosts, and spike traps, and things are sure to get out of hand quickly. Oh, there's a bear now! A hearty offering of fish! Ha, and the bear is on its way. Be sure to share the tools, as there's only one tool per job. A hatchet to chop down the trees, a pickaxe to harvest the rocks, a fishing rod for fish, and a mallet to finish off the job. Each level is a race against the clock, where players are required to build tents, construct a campfire, cook enough food, and get into bed before darkness falls. To achieve these objectives, players must harvest resources scattered around the level and satisfy the building requirements while avoiding hazards, navigating the landscape efficiently, and work cooperatively to complete the objectives as quickly as possible. Oh, that's one tent complete! Now, 2 tents complete. 3 tents finished. 1 to go. The last tent is finished. Well done, campers! A straggler! Quick, get to bed before nightfall! Ha-ha! Success! I hope you enjoyed this gameplay demonstration. You can wishlist Camped Out now on Steam. See you at the campsite!
Hello everyone, I am joined by this amazing cast. This is our core D&D panel of Legends at PAX Online. For those that don't know, Core is a new online gaming destination that has hundreds of free PC games, but what's crazy about Core is that everything on it is actually built by gamers.
What?
Yeah, I know. What? I know.
No, there's no way.
Who would have done such a terrible idea? No, it's fantastic. It's really exciting. It's game playing and game creation all in one platform, and it's completely free. I don't know how you're all making money, but it sounds like a great idea. I appreciate your altruism. Over the last month, Core has been running a massive contest that has challenged participants to build Dungeons and Dragons inspired games. Later on in this panel, we'll reveal and play through some of those games, so please stay tuned. It's very exciting. This brings us back to our panel of legends, which you see before you.
Legend?
For PAX, we thought it would be fun. Yeah, we thought it'd be fun to use Core to bring to life some of all of your favorite D&D adventures from all of your favorite D&D adventurers. So let's go down the list. We're going to introduce some people. First off, we've got writer, gamer, musician, conventioneer, tabletop enthusiast. He's also from my hometown. He's the co-founder of Penny Arcade, and he's a dungeon master for Acquisitions Incorporated, the C Team. It's Jerry Holkins. Yay, Jerry Holkins.
When you put them all together, it sounds very impressive.
It does.
I was surprised. I had forgotten that I had done some of those things, so I appreciate the reminder.
You're welcome. Doing stuff. We've got veteran voice actor, writer, voice director on countless cartoons, video games, and anime series. You probably know him from his roles as Not the Brave and also Scanlan Shorthalts from the series that you may have also heard of, Critical Role. We've got Sam Riegel.
Wow. Wow. Yes. It's great to virtually be here. Thank you for tapping your teacups.
That's the traditional celebration.
Proper respect.
No. Everyone on Zoom's doing it, or vMix, or she's an actress from hit shows like Daredevil, True Blood, and the legendary Dungeon Master behind Relics and Rarities and Lost Odyssey, the Book of Knowledge.
Come on.
And also one of the nicest human beings I've ever met, Deborah M. Wall.
Hey, thanks. Yay. I'll take that last one.
Yeah.
Ow!
On top of this, we've got professional wrestler and lifelong video game aficionado. We've seen him on WWE's SmackDown, exploring the worlds of gaming and all things nerdom on Up, Up, Down, Down, and slaying monsters on the show Rollout. It's WWE superstar, also Jerry Holkins. No, I mean Xavier Woods. It's Xavier Woods and Van Guess.
Hello, aka Austin Creed. Check out Up, Up, Down, Down, the greatest YouTube channel of all time, and Twitch and Instagram and Twitter at XavierWoods. Check me out, baby.
Oh
wow, he knows how to do it.
Wow.
I know.
Yeah, that's nice.
Good. I need a
train.
That's good.
I forgot to flex during my intro. I blew it.
I have retained my gains as well. I want to make sure that everybody understands gains completely retained over Corona World. I'm doing great.
Yeah,
a lot of meat.
You look tight.
A lot of beef.
So tight. So much. My God.
We've got world-renowned vocal artist, beatboxer, musician, comedian. He's been seen on The Late Show with James Gordon and other series shows, international live performances. I got the privilege to see him in concert. It was a transformative experience. You all should do it. It's amazing. It's Reggie Watts.
Hey,
Yay!
Thanks a lot for having us. Thank you. We appreciate all of it.
We're going to begin with Reggie Watts and the never-ending beginning. What is this, Reggie?
Never-ending beginning.
That's so great.
Okay, here's the story. Back in ancient times, in an alternate universe, surrounded by the stars of millions of those who worshipped magic, lied and lane, crew of people who ventured into a place, an inn of inimaginable consequence. And then they went inside, and so this is a story. I'm going to go in and out between like fourth person and third person.
Sure.
So basically, there's like this crew of cats. They're not cats, but they're adventurers of different kinds. Maybe like one person is a half elf ranger by the name of Bronwyn. Another person might be just a general fighter who's just like a hired gun, if you will, or hired blade, if you will, as well, or hired arrow tip, and a few others. And they're inside of this inn. They make it inside this inn, and there's an innkeeper. And this, in keeping with the innkeeper storyline, he's like, "Hey, what's up?" And they're like, "Hey, we're looking for an adventure, and we heard that you might have some information about where we should go." And the innkeeper is very excited because he wants to share this information with them because he just wants to be helpful, and some people just really get off on being very helpful. And so so he wants to tell them about this place that they can go on the outskirts of town. Probably a path that leads to some kind of a mountain. At the base of the mountain, there probably is an opening of some sort, and you would go inside, and so on and so forth. But he gets stopped, and he gets stopped by the adventurers, and the adventurers start asking questions like, how long has this inn been around? And the shopkeeper is like, "Well, it's been around for quite some time. I guess my wife and I have owned it for, I don't know, maybe like 70 years or something like that, depending on which species of demarcation time that you're talking about." And they're like, "Oh, that's very interesting." And then the innkeeper is like, "Now, I'll tell you. Once you exit," then he gets stopped again. And one of them is like, "So, do you and your wife get along? Do you get along pretty well?" And the innkeeper's like, "Yes, we get along pretty well. She's great. She actually is the one who built this place. She's the designer, and I'm just simply here to kind of take some of the people as they arrive and adjust them to their environment, and then send them on their way." And this goes on for quite some time.
I was gonna say roll for nosiness.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know. And it's like,
how's things with your wife?
and questions like how tall is your wife? Where did you get these windows from? Is this reclaimed wood? What's up with the wallpaper, and how did you choose it? Where'd you get it from? It's out of style, but it's nice to see it, here.
This is amazing. Does the bartender ever get frustrated by this, or is he just like happy to talk?
It's his hell.
I mean, yeah. Basically, he's because he's endlessly cordial, and doesn't want to offend anybody, so he plays along. But his energy is being drained, and I don't know if anyone is an actual energy vampire per se, but they're just overly curious, and he's just stuck there trying to.
Well, you got like energy vampires, and then you have like earnest documentary filmmakers, and I think it's roughly the same tier.
Yeah,
there's a lot of extraction.
It's essentially like people who just see the smallest things as just endless fractals. Like there is no end to their curiosity.
It's the coastline.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, this just goes on and on. I mean, that's just it. That's the whole adventure.
So now they're talking.
They never leave. They never leave and do anything.
They never leave.
Yes.
No,
and you can go around the place and just examine weird props and stuff. This is
What's
so cool.
with this broom?
Yeah, you can just
there's a bucket for the
mop. Buckets filled with murky, soapy water. Does not smell good.
I feel like this is what purgatory.
The dungeon master's has the angry eyes now.
Yeah. Occasionally, See, yeah, but there's so much to check out there. There's jugs and corks and crates.
Oh, what is that fish?
Whoa.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Dude, look at this.
See?
You could have
so
your
they can
birthday
sit
party.
down. Yeah, you can have a birthday party. You can have a
party? Do they sing to you?
Yes, the cheese does.
Cheese sing.
Is this
magic mouth
sort of
cheese?
Yes.
Is it a theme restaurant or anything like that? Is it like a stinking
rose? It's a D&D starting point themed restaurant.
That actually sounds like an incredible real life idea. I know.
I will go in with you on that.
Oh,
That sounds
really?
great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Count me
Let's
in
do
too.
it.
Are the
You get your
placemats
first
just
D20.
your character sheet that
Yeah.
you have to fill out while you wait for your order?
Yeah.
But they're just generic, they're just like kind of like just as an ode to the idea of D&D. It's just it's not your actual character. It's just like a character, just any character.
Well, and they scrupulously avoid anything that would require the expensive license. Right.
Oh yeah. Constantly.
It's laminated so they can just wipe it down for the next people that come in.
Yep.
Absolutely. Of course.
Lowercase
and
d, lowercase n, lowercase d.
Yep. Yes, exactly. It's dend.
Yes.
Yeah, look at that.
So yeah.
It turned into
So this is interesting. As they investigate stuff, it like upgrades. Is that what I'm seeing?
Yeah, it becomes more detailed.
Oh, cool.
That makes sense.
That does
You
make
gotta
sense.
roll an investigation check on everything, basically.
Yeah, it's just a barrel,
dope.
but when you look at it, that's really cool.
I do have a question though. So you said that you had a hired gun, a hired blade, a hired arrow tip, if you will,
Yes.
sir.
Yeah.
So the hired person, are they in on just hanging out in the tavern as well, asking questions?
They're on the clock, right?
Well, they are on the clock, but it really doesn't matter. They're just taking their lead, So as far as they're concerned, they don't have to do anything dangerous. They're just hanging out. This is easy money.
Oh, cool. Stair.
Oh, upstairs.
Oh wow, you built in an upstairs. Hey,
A second
God
floor.
bless you. God bless
Open
you.
flame on the second floor. Yes.
Doesn't that look like a secret hat? Oh, it is.
Oh, a third floor.
Oh, there's gonna be a doll.
Oh, no way.
And a fourth floor.
More stairs. More stairs.
Whoa. I love this.
I actually love this, that the fact that as you explore, you see more of the area and what's actually around. Because I feel like even just for people that aren't used to playing D&D, like they play something like this and they go, oh, we get this in video game language, but now I kind of understand it more in D&D because of course we wouldn't know what it looks like because we haven't examined it.
Oh, that's interesting. What a great, that's great.
As a weird
Crafty.
science nerd, that's a thing that happens too, where we have, unless we like focus on something, we only retain like a blurry image of it anyways. So like that's actually a real thing your brain does, that you have to specifically focus to remember something.
Yeah, it's like a flashlight in the dark.
Ooh, what's she
What's
doing?
going on with this monk?
What is that?
Oh,
No, that's the,
she's free out there.
that's the Groovin monk. The
This
Groovin
monk is making
like-
TikToks. You can tell with the camera.
Oh,
She ran away.
I think something's happening.
she was embarrassed.
you can't.
Connor taking
Oh,
selfie.
this is actual adventure.
Oh, now you can go out. Oh, that's right.
Oh,
You
it's
can
great.
go out.
Whoa.
Yeah, you can go out to the square.
She's so
Yeah.
fast. She's so fast.
Well,
Yes.
that's
Oh my
the
God,
thing
catch
about
her.
the game. If you find the right mechanism, it will lead you out into a square or the outskirts of town, but you still won't make it to an actual adventure. But it does expand.
Does that person get away, or no? They just
Yeah.
sort of sit there.
And then
and
there's
wait.
more dancing. There's more dancing.
Oh, that's it. Those are bad guys.
Because this is Thriller.
You walked into Thriller, yeah?
Yeah, totally.
Oh, and that's how it ends.
Oh my God, I love
That's the end of it.
Wow.
Amazing.
Yeah, that's the end. That's the end.
Leave them.
The
The end
more.
is the beginning.
Twist.
Yeah, it's a cliffhanger. It's a never-beginning cliffhanger. Cliffhanger at the end.
Man.
Wrap up.
This is like it's like a spectral West Side Story sort of situation going
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
We are the
Yeah.
And then you run back to the inn where it's safe.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, you should.
Yeah, like,
Those
well,
docs
check
are
out the
messed up.
wallpaper. Yeah, and there's more
That-
like cabinets to explore.
Reggie, was this an idea, or did you ever play? Did you ever do a one shot of this, or was this just in your head? This game.
This was when I was playing D&D, when I was streaming Twitch D&D with what we called the D team. We called ourselves the D team, and
Nice.
because we could just never make it out. Like we were playing and we got into the inn, and everybody was constantly like asking about like all the shit I was talking about, like, the floors, what are they made of, and like how much square footage do you have? Like we never got to the adventure.
I was
So what did the
so bad.
What did the DM do while you guys were doing this?
I mean, he kind of knew.
Die.
I mean, it was our second. I think it was our second game. Yeah, he just was like he kept trying to get us to leave, and we just couldn't. I think we did eventually make it out a little bit, but we never got to anything important.
Amazing.
Imagine writing this whole crazy story with all these settings and all these monsters and traps, and they never leave the inn. I'd be so mad. All this hard work.
That's amazing. I can't wait to troll one of my players with that adventure.
That's
taking
killer.
notes. Yeah. Our next adventure is Deborah M. Wall's Rise of the Fluttering Foghorn Whist.
Okay. Ooh, all right. So this is based on Lost Odyssey Book of Knowledge, which you can go find and watch, because I had one of my favorite moments. So the idea of the Book of Knowledge is that this cast of characters actually gets magically sucked into a book of fairy tales. And the only way out is to kind of jump from one fairy tale to the next and get out before you die or get stuck within this book. And you eventually have to make it to the Tail Weaver's lair. She's the one who's trapped you in the book, and defeat her in order to ultimately come back to the real world. So this is one of the first adventures that they jump into the book. It is a rhyming couplet, sort of silly story in the vein of like an Alice in Wonderland kind of thing. And the idea is that all of these farm animals are the crew on this ship. There's a pride of lions as the captain and the other mates. So your job in this story is to basically take control of the ship, because if you are not in control of the ship, as soon as it hits the edge of the story, you take force damage and the whole thing starts over again.
Oh, nice.
You have to distract and get past all of these farm animals and get to the steerage and then steer it through this particular portal in order to escape. So I was pleasantly surprised that my farm animals did a wonderful job of just destroying this party. At one point, Rosie, the bee stinger, Kate's fantastic character, Kate Welch's, she had a fox biting her leg, a pig biting the other one, a cow ramming her from the front, and 2 crows sitting in her hair, just pecking away at her head. One of my favorite moments in the whole story was Satine Phoenix as Blanya. After they'd taken this, they took 10 force damage when the story reset and all this stuff. And she was like, I don't understand. Are we trying to help the story or hurt the story? And TJ goes, the story is hurting us. It's just the best moment. So the best part for us was Matthew Lillard thought that if he could restart the story if he jumped in the water. So at one point he jumped in the water, forgetting that the walrus, who is the first mate of the ship, comes out of the water. So he was locked in a deadly battle, just him and this giant walrus.
Oh no! Oh no! Run!
No!
Run!
Uh-oh.
Oh my God! Run!
And he's got a hat.
That's terrifying.
That is a fast walrus.
It is.
It's a horror book.
Hipster walrus.
The animals are all ill-tempered,
and they're really jacked.
Yeah, they're kind of zombified. They're a little bit.
Okay.
They are really jacked. Look at that.
Strong.
And so
USDA choice.
Yeah.
They pretty straightforwardly just try to sail this ship. If you don't touch them or interfere with them, they just do that and they don't bother you. But as soon as you get in the way, their eyes turn red and they start to attack. So they will try to stop you.
I'm getting like Animal Farm Noah's Ark vibes.
Yeah,
yeah.
Very, very much like they're taking over. So yeah, you can't fully kill them.
You can't kill the animals. So the ASPCA will still approve this game.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. If you
Cool.
reduce their hit points to 0, they turn into dust, but then reappear again, and and they come back into it because they're just figments. They're just telling the story over and over again. However, you are real. So you're stuck in this story as a real person.
And they
wow, that's
oh no! What happens if he catches him?
That's just like blue. Can we? There's
If the walrus catches, oh wow!
That's dope. Like that is so great.
Wow.
It's pretty cool. So it's based. There's a beautiful Dali painting that has a ship with butterfly wings that I took inspiration from.
Whoa.
Oh, there it goes. They're leaving Mulgrave
Oh my
behind.
God!
It's
The vines.
This is very.
This is awesome.
This is very Studio Ghibli sort of. It's so cool.
Like a
my
better
God.
Vanilla Sky.
Maxfield Parish Clouds. Nice.
Yeah.
Mine isn't like
Oh,
this.
there you
I just
go.
want to make sure everybody knows.
Mine is so violent.
Mine is
so violent.
compared to this.
I think it would be great if everybody's was exactly like this. Like just some.
Yeah.
Oh man, she
Even
stole my
the
butterfly
same one.
wing.
My butterfly idea.
They're flying into the abyss. Oh.
But I think the fun of
Yeah,
it
this
is
is-
that it ended up actually being quite violent. I thought it would be
Oh,
such
really?
a silly little thing, and like we'd save the master battle for my big boss. But they had such a hard time dealing with all of these farm animals.
Oh,
I
yeah.
was pleasantly surprised how much damage like my cow and my horse did. You know.
Yeah.
It was pretty cool.
Bringing it back.
You know,
Unexpected.
I'm genuinely surprised because I just assumed like, okay, the ship's gonna be there and that's like the end of the story. But no, the ship actually animated and like flew
Yeah.
off.
Yeah.
Oh no!
And it's
so
like-
amazing.
Goodbye.
No, come back. Wait, I forgot. I'll never
Into
know.
the West.
This is just like
Frodo.
that Travis Scott thing in Fortnite, honestly. Like there's a lot of parallels, I think.
Look at that. Look at this guy.
Yes.
He was like,
I don't
what
know.
happened? Oh
I
man.
got
Look at those emotes.
We're too late. We're late.
You missed it.
Oh, well, come on.
Well, if you wouldn't quit changing clothes 3 or 4 times, we would have
No.
made it.
No, they're
Oh,
2000 and late.
So you'll have to do it again.
Coming up, we've got Sam Riegel's Mission Imporkable.
Yeah, a very gritty
More farm animals.
cinematic adventure. There are
Sorry,
more
could you say
farm
the
animals in this.
What was the title?
Mission
It's Sam
Imporkable.
Riegel's Mission Imporkable.
I'm just in my brain. I'm seeing pigs lowering from ceilings with the music going.
That would have been better.
Pretty much it.
This is a game that I played with my family, my wife and my 2 kids. So it was family friendly. And it was my wife's first time. Actually, my kids had played before my wife. It was my wife's first time ever playing D&D. So I was helping her most of the time, and the kids were actually helping her. But anyway, I made this town where they all lived, and there was like a yearly harvest festival, which
Totally.
involves a pig parade. And this town has a famous beloved pig named Philip that they sort of parade through the town, and it's the symbol of pride of the town, and wouldn't you know it, the pig gets pilfered. Someone steals the pig at some point.
No.
And my wife and kids had to go and find Philip, or else the pride and cultural heart of this town would be missing, and they wouldn't know what to do for their harvest season. So I think what we're seeing now is the parade, the farm animal parade, which is amazing. They went all out.
Oh, so pretty.
This is exquisite.
I love it.
Wow, there's floats with.
But Phillips is empty. Phillips is empty.
Cutscenes.
Oh,
Cutscenes.
wow. What is happening now? Dramatic camera. No, this is the parade.
Big parade. Big parade. Big parade.
Wow. Town Square is amazing, guys.
Man, you really inspired them, apparently.
I did. When I played the game, just to make it more relatable to my kids, I put it in the Frozen universe for some reason. So this is a town near where the events of Frozen take place, and they had just recovered from this weird winter that knocked out half of their crops that they had no idea why it was caused. And so they were just getting back up on their feet and stuff. But wow, this parade is so good.
Yeah, it
Man.
is.
Oh, I think that's the mayor. Yeah, that's the mayor. He's crying because he's lost his pig.
Well, yeah, but
Oh,
look at
yeah.
look at that big empty Philip. You know, this is where a Philip would optimally be, right here.
Yeah.
Yes.
No.
Oh, we have to find Philip. We showed up in the next fairy tale.
Oh, you can talk to the mayor. Oh no, my pig Philip is missing. Oh, okay, we did it. The only pig to survive the Great Freeze. The Great Freeze. That was the Frozen thing. Wow, we did it.
I love this so much.
Because I felt like the towns around where Frozen happened would be just totally baffled as to why many of why did my grandma freeze to death suddenly?
Yeah.
She was
It's worth considering, right?
Totally. Because it was the middle of summer. People are probably wearing shorts and stuff, and then all of a sudden they freeze to death.
Oh.
Awful.
Did the mayor say something about the pig's belly button?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But dude, look at this.
Distinguishing mark.
But look what they got set up here. Look what they got set up here. Philip eats good, everybody. Philip eats good.
He's the mayor's pig.
Broken.
Yeah, and I guess you can investigate for clues maybe and find where the tracks lead. When I played with my kids, the tracks led, wouldn't you know it, to the thing that I had the most minifigures for. It led them to a goblin village. And the goblins had stolen this pig and were about to roast it when the kids have to come and. Oh look, there's a trail.
Yeah, no, we're gonna see it. This is rich.
Yeah.
Oh, here's a rope.
Yeah.
But look at this pen. Look at this pen these goblins have set up.
Whoa.
Oh wow.
Oh wow.
A mega pen.
This is like Mad Max.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you got to infiltrate the pen, or the goblin wall, I guess.
And look at all that forest clearing they're doing.
Yeah, look at this clear cut. They aren't good stewards of nature.
They are not.
Well, they're
There you
goblins.
go.
Oh, cool.
Climb in.
Oh,
There
good
we
end.
go.
Amazing.
Their engineer's gonna get an earful.
I would sing the song, except we'll get charged.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
the audio's
ISO. They can cut
It's
it out.
parody. It's parody.
Parody. There you go.
It's
Oh, look at this Jack's pig.
oh,
Find.
and then you had to figure out. That's right. That's right. You guys got all the details because there was a million pigs, and they had to figure out which one was the right pig by rolling all sorts of animal handling checks because all pigs really they look alike. I mean,
Find the Audi. Just pick them up like babies.
oh man.
All the goblins.
What the heck?
It's
Gobble, gobble. Gobble, gobble.
it's hogdemonium in there.
It is.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, in the fire.
Look at that. Wow.
Did they
Oh,
find
man.
Philip? Oh my god!
Whoa.
Oh my god! This is intense.
It's a
This
swarm.
is intense, dudes.
What is
A
happening?
goblin swarm.
Come
That's
on.
crazy.
Mass
Oh, there's so
combat.
much blood.
This is your family adventure. This is
Yep.
your family-friendly adventure. Goblin genocide.
Yes.
Yeah.
The family-friendly, pig-oriented John Wick.
Yeah.
And then the pigs
Wow.
cook the goblin.
Whoa. Whoa.
Oh wow!
Okay.
So much
Well,
murder.
looks like some of the pigs were killed
Alright.
too.
Did you find
We're going
Philip
back.
yet?
Not yet. He's got to pick
Howdy.
up all the
Oh! That seems like the hard way to check.
Yeah.
It's such a hero walk carrying the pig
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yes, totally.
It really is.
instead of a princess walking.
And he's
Come with
air
me if you want to
moonwalking.
live.
It's like the end of Officer and a Gentleman. It's,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hold on. There's another chapter. You've inspired these people, Sam.
I swear the game that I played with my kids wasn't even this long.
Wow.
This is so great.
This is like the Prydain series. This is
Rich.
so amazing.
Rich.
It's so good.
Oh my god.
And
It's
well,
all of the
awesome.
Doom books. All of the Doom
Yeah.
books all in one.
yeah.
Yeah, man.
I love that you found the Audi.
Yeah.
No.
They made an Audi pig for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
They
sponsored
Just
by
like
that.
Dune.
custom.
That's
Just
power.
like Dune, I will get
The new
Timothy Chalamet
E-Tron.
to play the pig.
Oh, Chalamet.
And the fact that all the other pigs, nah, y'all stay here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, whatever, get out of here. Well, they did kill all the captors, so.
They're just free and
Yeah, the
wild.
pigs
Own
can-
this pin now.
The
Yeah, they're free
pigs
within
can
the
feast
walls
on
of
their
the fortress.
entrails for.
Yeah.
Next year it'll be an evil band of pigs that have created their own
Yes.
society.
Yes.
Yes.
They'll kidnap the mayor.
I like it.
You
I like
left
it.
us. How dare you?
The sequel always has that twist. You know, they have their own version of the story.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that series will be called Oink.
The awakening.
Yeah, the Oinkening.
A gritty
Oink. The
redo.
Oinkening. Oink. Oinker's Revenge.
I have a question about the town itself. Do they
Yes.
eat bacon in this town?
Yeah.
I mean,
that's a
I
good
think
question.
so, but they wouldn't eat Philip
Not from
since
Philip.
he's special. But
Ah.
yeah, no, they definitely eat pig. And so
Okay,
we're back.
good
And
to know.
what are we going to do? Restore the town to its former glory and go on another parade? That's
Are
what
we
it
gonna
seems
go
like
put
we're
him in
doing.
the? Are we gonna go put him in that little bathtub?
Yeah.
Yeah. On the float.
Big parade. Big parade.
Exquisite.
Parade.
I love how
That's
heroic the lead guy is too. It really
So great.
Oh, a pig
matches up
piñata.
with.
It's up and down.
Wow.
Very cool.
Look at that. Look, we found him.
We have your pig, good sir.
Let me check to make sure.
Oh, the handoff. The handoff.
Oh, he's so happy.
How
Wait,
strong is everyone?
Dude, the mayor has some upper body strength, right?
Now that
Oh,
you've restored Philip, we can have a proper pig parade.
let's see. Is he in his? And is he in the pig thing?
Another cutscene. Another 4K cutscene.
Amazing.
Yeah. You guys, I feel really special. You guys
Yeah.
are out on this.
4K, 190 hertz.
It's exquisite.
Oh, there
Yes,
Oh.
it is.
Philip.
Oh,
Just
Running the new
rightful place.
3090.
Oh, look
Philip
at
is
him.
ready.
Amazing. Wow. That's great. Oh, pumpkins.
Yeah,
That's some pig.
exquisite.
Oh.
Oh man, these guys
Oh,
are.
there's a pig nest.
Oh God, who are those freaky dudes?
Oh, yeah.
Like the
A little too into
Wow,
it.
look at that.
Whoa.
Oh,
Okay.
oh,
Yeah.
they just came out of quite a rave.
Oh, I love
God.
that. Oh, I love the pig keg. That's too
It's really
good.
cool. It's
And
really
the, and
cool
the
to see.
piñata, I guess, that you can hit.
Piñata.
Pig, yeah.
Amazing.
Piñata, do, piñata, do.
Our next adventure is Jerry Holkins, his own The Hot Potato Baby Encounter.
Well, now let's be very clear. It's not actually called the Hot Potato Baby Encounter. It's actually called the Night of 1,000 Hours, and it's very serious. But I mean, I think that we've all run games where we had like a particular big idea, and then like as soon as it gets down into like the ground level execution of it, you come to realize that you've done something very ridiculous, and you know, right? This is what happened. The first story that I gave them, it seems like we didn't go with that one, and that was where my eldest child rolled a natural 20 to seduce a gigantic black widow spider. And so there's a lot of conversations that we had to have about that as a family afterward. But the other game that I had was a one-shot that I've run a few times. I've run it for the C Team, the Acquisitions Incorporated spinoff, but I've also run it for a couple other groups of people. And the basic hook is that obviously you can see outside, very stormy, very rainy night. This is just the reverse of Reggie's, basically. But basically the way that it works is that, you know, you're in here, you're in this inn, you're doing your stuff. I see that you've put together an Omen facsimile. I appreciate it. But basically what happens is you're doing your inn thing, and then you basically end up becoming the background, because we all want to mess with the inn as a concept, right? So what happens here is that you end up in the middle of someone else's adventure, and their adventure basically gets handed off to you. They are protecting this baby, who eventually we realize is a changeling, and there are other changeling creatures and lycanthropes after her because they think that they can utilize her as some kind of a cure. And she is enchanted. Her swaddling is enchanted so that anytime someone tries to kill the baby, the person holding it takes the damage instead. And so I was like, okay, this is going to be kind of an interesting tactical thing. And then what actually happens, literally 100% of the time you run this game, is that people throw a baby around in the middle of a battle, that was not the goal. The goal is very dramatic. It's very serious. But what happens in practice is that people juggle a baby. Which is not safe for babies. And so,
no, it's terrible.
So she is bringing in the baby, but of course she has already she has already been subject to assassination on the way in. So now she has taken all the wounds that these malefactors were trying to commit to this child. Now you have the child, and the rest of the people that are after this baby are now after you as a result. I love that you've sort of, oh, here they are right here.
Oh,
dang.
jeez.
It's on. Give us that baby.
Mistaken, red means bad.
You have the chosen.
Well, the baby is sort of
Jake.
magnetized to your gauntlet, which is very
exactly.
helpful.
It's like a baby. It's like a baby.
Oh, so this is like baby football.
Football throw.
I see.
Yeah, it's like a lateral.
Or like a ultimate baby.
Did they bounce the baby?
Did that bounce?
Yeah, bounce
It's
pass.
Whoa.
Oh god! Oh god!
great.
Oh god!
Banking the baby. You're skipping the baby like a stone.
I love it. I
Yeah.
love it.
Wow. It's like Captain America's shield.
Oh my god!
Oh, that's so cool.
So if you're holding the
Yeah.
baby, if you're holding the
Yes.
baby and people fight your friends, you take the damage. You said.
Yeah, basically what happens is that if you have this baby, they're trying to attack this baby, you absorb all the damage that they are trying to inflict. So protecting this baby is very dangerous for you personally.
I see. I see.
Whoa, cool.
So what happens if no one's holding the baby?
It's never once happened.
Oh, my question
Yeah.
was, do you have a plan for if the baby is unattended and takes damage? I know you said that has never happened, but do you have a
Yeah.
plan for if it does?
Yeah. Like I said, in the moment, I have never had to do it.
Right.
I have never been at a table where at least one person out of the group of 4 took the baby, and then once the mechanism becomes clear that whoever has the baby takes a lot of damage, then baby distribution increases at that point.
Baby
I see.
distribution.
If you have the baby, can you attack, or are you only on defense when you're holding the baby?
You can utilize one-handed. Yeah.
Got it. With the baby, but not with your longsword or anything. And then
Yeah.
with the baby, is it like rugby rules? Can you lateral and drop kick, or is it just passing with your hand?
It's all at that point. It's all dexterity, athletics checks, and then if you fail, there's a second check where the person you're throwing to can like sacrifice themselves to get it.
Oh, wow.
So like I said,
I've
never seen it.
I feel like I would either tie the baby to the horse so the horse takes the damage, or beat up one of the bad guys, keep him on a chain, and have the baby tied to him. So when we do get into fights, that bad guy gets messed up.
So essentially, someone is riding through town at night. They see all this. They're like, hop in. Oh, you have Cthulhu's Draub. You got Walnut Dawn Grass. You got Rosie. What a delight! And then what you find out is that these woods are not safe either. There is basically head height silver threads tied between trees.
And what do those do?
Well, they decapitate people.
Oh,
okay. They're decapped. This is where being a gnome really pays off.
It don't hurt. It don't hurt.
Oh my god. Here it comes. No, the decapitation.
Ooh, there goes my head right out of my skin. Oh yeah.
Oh god. Does the baby when you run this game, Jerry? Does the baby cry and blow stealth checks and stuff like that? Is it a loud baby?
Every time.
Part of the reason that this works is because it's sort of designed to be a movie. It's a one shot. And so all the dynamics and everything happens so fast. It's all gut reactions from the beginning to the end, basically. It isn't meant to be really part of a larger campaign, although for the C team, I did put them in. But yeah, ultimately, eventually, they're able to get here to the Wayrest Chapel. Oh, thanks, baby. But they're able to get
the baby climbed up the hill by itself. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I got
this. This baby is an advanced baby. It's not one of these lesser babies. we've heard about. The story ends years later. This baby has grown up with this the priest of this place as her father, but she still remembers. She remembers what all the members of the party look like, and is always taking on their shapes. So it's a very serious, very touching, very sweet thing. But it's ultimately, at the end of the day, it's about throwing a baby as far as you can. Hopefully, or kicking a baby through the uprights.
I love it. It's also like, if I had like these game mechanics, all I want to do is play dodgeball with the baby. Like it looks just so fun to bounce.
Still bouncing. Wow.
Dodge baby.
There he is. You got him.
No.
It's cool because so from you making this game, obviously, like you said, this was not the objective of the campaign. But now seeing it in like a real life situation, it's like you're finding more ways to mess with this baby.
No. I mean, but like, that's what I realized as soon as I was telling the story to them. I'm like, no, actually, I think this should be a genre. We got to make sure the baby throw thing gets set up so they can take advantage of it.
It's a third-person shooter for baby.
Yeah, I want to see it explode on board.
Our last adventure is Xavier Woods and the Even Flow Experience. What is this about?
Even flow.
Exactly. So I feel like I have to explain the title first. So as I am a professional wrestler, aka a LARPer, if you don't get it, the Even Flow is a move used by a guy named Raven. It was a DDT, and so one of our characters in this, her name is Raven, and we started singing Even Flow, and it ends up that we use a DDT at the end of this. But where we're going into right now, in order to get to the last boss of the campaign, we have to go through 4 different elemental portals, essentially, and fulfill certain puzzles in order to get the other portal to open back up, and for the one that we were in to close. Once we did all 4 of them, then the 5th and final portal opened and we fought the boss. So what we're looking at here is, this is incredible. I wasn't expecting to be all this.
Beautiful.
This is the water elemental portal that we went into, and so obviously tons of water. As you finish certain puzzles, the water moves around, and you got water monsters in here and stuff. This is, my God, this is insane.
Look at that!
And there's the huge water giant monster that we had to fight. And all of our characters are very different. So I played a character named, he was a gnome named David. AKA David the Gnome, and yes,
good nickname.
And so, and so, like any other game of D&D, it's just us arguing on what's supposed to happen, because none of us really had specific things to deal with, any specific elements. So it wasn't like, oh, we'll lay on this one character for this or this character for that. We really had to work together, which isn't the easiest thing to do for us because we just yell and scream all the time. And so once you went through the water elemental portal, we went to Earth. Very Captain Planet of us.
Yeah.
So
we went. Austin, is there a heart elemental?
The heart is within you at all times, so you always have that.
It's always the friends you made along the way.
Exactly. It's not the actions that are important, but the friendships you make. See that? And so as we went into the Earth elemental portal, again, this looks absolutely wild. I know everybody had like stories and stuff for theirs, but I'm kind of like very locked into the fact that this exists at all.
Yeah,
it's cool. It's amazing.
Oh my God!
Cool.
Wow, this is so sick. So here we go in the Earth elemental portal. Obviously, we fight another big like Earth giant made of rocks, very angry, throwing heavy objects at us. We're all terrified. Again, fighting stuff, doing puzzles like a normal like dungeon crawler type of situation. But there's the Earth elemental portal, and then we got to fire.
Wow!
This is where we turned up the heat a little bit.
Clearly, so good.
Yeah,
flexing.
Yes. One of the things with this was that as we fulfilled certain parts of puzzles, like more lava would come up and block our path, so we had to go do other things. And what? This is the whole like fire temple? Yes.
Yeah.
This looks incredible. I can feel the heat looking at it.
Oh, that's so good.
Wow. So yeah, as you can see, all the lava and everything, all the fire.
Yeah.
We're burning up. We're sweltering hot in here.
The
But again,
obsidian
puzzle
dynasty.
like
Glassed over.
yes, it's all that
it's like
that liquid
obsidian.
magma that's cooled over. You know,
Yeah.
that's the word I'm looking for.
Obsidian.
So obviously, same situation, but gotta come together and figure out how to get through the through the air portal. We are finally up in the clouds. It is insane. You don't want to fall off because you will most likely die, and that's no fun. And you won't make it to the last portal. This is good. God, this is amazing.
Look at that.
Yes, incredible.
Whoa,
And
that's
they
a
make
big
a
one.
spider.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I don't like that
Situation.
guy. I don't like
We
that
had
guy
to
at all.
climb. We had to climb this like side of a castle and all these rocks and get up to the top, and we had to fight this enormous spider on the way, and then get up to this huge tornado. And I'm sorry, I'm like literally just amazed that this that this is a thing you guys were able to build. What,
dude?
This looks insane.
Oh my God.
Fly.
I cannot believe this.
This is so
But yeah,
beautiful.
fighting the spider was nothing but a huge mess, and then dealing with this because like obviously we're dealing with the air and the wind and having to not everything works as we would want it to because the huge gusts of wind are messing up our attacks and things like that, and as we're trying to climb and stuff. And so taking that into account in a game just really kind of messed us all up because we're like, oh wait, nothing's hitting. They're like, yeah, because there's too much wind everywhere. You have to take that into account.
Yeah.
Cool. I'll swing left to hit right. So once we got through that and beat the spider, we we came upon the big boss.
Ooh. Who dis?
Now the thing about this is one of our players, Raven. So she was a rogue, and she constantly, whenever we fought stuff, and it was her turn, she's like, "Oh, I'm gonna go in this back corner in the dark and just kind of like hang out and not fight because I don't want to get beat up and just leave us to fight stuff."
Wow.
And so, quote unquote, unfortunately, she ended up getting killed in this last fight. And so we had to run over and make sure she didn't actually die. But what ended up happening is we finally, after going through all of these portals together, we finally like dipped into our teamwork aspect of us being a crew. And so, wow.
That looks so good.
Whoa.
I want a piece of that.
Look at the torture cages.
Oh wow.
Yes, they
look
got
at
the
that.
chains on the wall and stuff.
Very good.
So those chains on the
Little
wall messed us
Hellraiser
up
action.
because
Yeah.
they would attach to us and then we wouldn't be able to move. And so then stuff would just beat us up while we were strapped in. And so it's like, oh, you got some enemies, cool, whatever. And then we go to attack, and then he's like, oh, well, the chain has a turn. And we're like, what do you mean the chain has a turn? It's like, oh, the chain wraps around you and holds you so you can't move and attack next turn. It's like, wait. We're all almost dead. And so we all almost lost it. But this was like one of the coolest things that I've ever been a part of in D&D, just because like all of the random aspects, the chains, the bad guys, and coming all together at the end and actually we quit squabbling for 5 minutes to get it done. With the last boss, we have a character who was able to put the boss to sleep. And so rather than just going and attacking him, we said, you know, it's teamwork time. Let's mess this guy up. So I figured maybe if I went and grabbed his head without really touching him and waited for an opportunity attack, as soon as he moved, I could do a wrestling maneuver called a DDT, where you drop your body down and drop their head into the ground, but not before one of our other players says, well, I've got a bow and arrow or crossbow or something. And so what he did was he shot the bow and arrow and shoots an arrow to the back of his head, which makes him move. Now the opportunity attack triggers. And so I end up DDTing him. And in that motion of the DDT, as his head is going into the ground, his legs are coming up over his body. And our other character, who's a huge cat woman, Lum, ends up grabbing his legs and picking him up into the air.
Oh,
right?
no.
So it's what's called a power bomb. But right before they're in the power bomb position, Lum had a bunch of axes she threw on the floor with the blades up.
Oh boy.
This is a complicated move.
Caught the power bomb and then power bombed the big bad into the axes, just absolutely obliterating them. Yes. It took us like maybe 5 minutes to put this together.
Wild.
Yeah. it's a bunch of wrestlers. So we had like a whiteboard out running like
I was
football
going to
plays
say,
on
did
it.
you have a whiteboard?
Pretty much. And I don't know. That was cool to me. That's the essence of this.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
It should be.
I have to ask.
It should be said. Yeah, good.
I have to ask, like, what is it like to see these adventures of yours like come to life this way? It just kind of blows my mind. Like, does it like send because you have like one picture in your head and then you get to see this.
But so for this, like, no joke, this is exactly how it was like in my brain. This is exactly like what I saw, more or less. And so the fact that we are sitting at a table using our imaginations to make this world, and our DM is explaining how all of the pillars look and the chains and this, like I see it in my head and it's like, oh, that would be really cool to see in real life. Like, y'all actually made it, and people can make this for free. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
I think it's neat to see them, but the main thing I think is cool is that people can access it and then use it and drop it in. Like these are neat situations and sets for people to tell their own stories, which I think is cool.
Yeah.
And then especially so if anybody that follows anyone who's got like a D&D game, like, so let's say, the ACK Inc. and they love it, and they see it at PAX, then they go, oh, you know what? I'm just going to build that. I'm going to build what I saw and I'm going to play it, and they can put it on here and everybody else can play it too. Like it's a really cool thing.
It's smooth.
Or you can also just create a story, a movie.
For the past month, Core has been running a D&D adventure building contest. These 5 winning experiences and 140 other D&D experiences are now all live on Core, and you can go and play them for free. The D&D Core contest has 4 different categories based on D&D adventuring locations. So we have dungeons, caves, and caverns, we have the wilderness, we have strongholds and towers, and we have the elemental plains. Now our panel of legends is going to introduce who are the winners.
It is my great pleasure to announce the winner of the Dungeons, Caves, and Caverns category is Treasure of Baland Ur by Cardinal Zebra. Woohoo! Of course, the runner. I know it was hotly contested, but you should know that the runner-up is Fairy's Debt by Punkarella Summers. Honor to all.
Congratulations.
Honor to all. So say we all.
Honor to all.
Yes.
And the winner of the wilderness category, New Lumeria, Stillwater, by Bryce Loves Gaming.
Wow.
Good job.
Wow.
And let us not forget, the runner-up is The Forsaken Temple by Elysian.
Congrats to you, Elysian. Yes. Very well done.
I am pleased to announce the winner of the Strongholds and Towers category is none other than Best Little Horror House. I think I said that clearly enough. By Circle Tunes. And the runner-up in the Strongholds and Towers category is Grand Tournament Melee by The Guys Game Studio. You'll be receiving your prizes too.
Yes, and I have the pleasure of introducing the winner of the Elemental Planes category. And that is Corruption of Aurealis by Kelsaru. Yay! And the runner-up is Pirate King's Domain by Altercation. Yay!
That was a close one. That was a close one.
So close. And the overall winner for the best D&D game created in Core is Forgotten Cisterns by Kepu.
Oh, man.
Yay!
No one is going to
want my
forget these
pool.
cisterns anytime soon. You know what I mean?
No,
Nope.
these cisterns are firmly rooted in history.
Congratulations to all the winners. Thanks to all participants. For the panel, any final words and thoughts about Core after having this experience of seeing like your imaginations brought to life?
I did have a question.
Thank you. Yeah, for sure.
I forgot how much did this cost, because this is incredible. I need this. How much was it?
I suspect free.
What? What? No, Austin. It's like, how much would you expect to pay? You know,
$29.99.
Hundreds, if not thousands, of dollars for such an event, for such a program, to have so much control and make these worlds free. Psh, wow.
Yeah,
I'm very excited about it personally. I think that it's going to help people who don't understand Dungeons and Dragons understand it a little bit better. So, cheers to you for capturing the spirit of Dungeons and Dragons and the imagination of so many thousands of players throughout years.
my hope is that, you know, the content that we partnered on doesn't result in real world crime. Beyond that, I think it was very well executed. But I do have that fear; it does linger.
It's crazy to me, like, so obviously all of us had so many different stories and things that we did throughout these games, and the fact that like this one program was able to bring every single one of those very different stories to life.
Pretty cool.
It's really cool to me.
Yeah.
Well, that's our show. Thank you to the panel, our panel of legends. I really appreciate you all coming together to share your stories. And thank you to everyone at PAX and everyone at home. Core is free to play and free to create. Make sure you try all of these amazing D&D games in Core right now, or you can start making your own. You can get started today by visiting coregames.com. This was an amazing experience, and thank you for all being a part of it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See ya.
Thank you, guys.
That's our pleasure.